We all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I prefer. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I want to welcome everyone to the Lower Gwinnett Township Board of Supervisors public meeting for Tuesday, April 7th, 2026. Before we begin our agenda, I'll pass it off to Mr. Tversky.
Madam Chair, as I've mentioned, every time this applicant has come before us, I'm recused from any consideration, so I will leave the dais.
So we have before us BET's revised proposal to redevelop the Springhouse Corporate Center at Norristown Road and Route 309. I'm going to turn it over to their attorney, Kristen Pianzio. I'm turning it over to their attorney, Kristen Pianzio. Am I saying it right? Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Pianzio from the law firm of Hamburg, Rubin, Mullen, Maxwell, and Lupin, representing BET tonight. In the front row, I have with me Michael Markman, the president of BET, Vice President Peter Clellan. I have Matt Hammond from Traffic Planning and Design, and Tob Knob in the back row, or right behind them, from Bowler Engineering. Tonight, we are here to ask you to kick off a process and do nothing else, but ask that you authorize this process moving forward for the consideration of an ordinance, which will begin a process that begins with your planning commission, working with your staff and consultants, the county planning commission, and eventually come back here for a hearing to consider the ordinance that has been filed and is in front of you. Obviously, no decisions on any land use of the property is in front of you this evening. This is the very beginning stages. And I understand there have been many meetings that have occurred prior to me being brought on the team. BET has asked me to join last month as they have been working on this project for a year and a half. I am a land use attorney with the law firm for the last 30 years. And I also represent townships like your solicitor, representing municipalities who consider applications like these. So BET has been working and having public meetings. I know they've been before you. They've been in front of your planning commission. They've had neighbor meetings. They've met with Gwinnett Estates, their next door neighbor, Old York Road Country Club, also their next door neighbor. As you know, they're bordered by 309 on the other side. They had an open meeting 2 weeks ago. That is a meeting that I did attend, where the public was invited, where they shared modifications to the project that have been made as a result of all the considerations, suggestions, and comments that have been made to date. So we have a presentation to share with you tonight. I have legal opinions that I will share with you in my capacity as counsel. I have opinions as to your duty as elected officials. You have a solicitor who will advise you as to his opinion as to your duties as elected officials. I will suggest to you what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said about keeping certain housing choices or income groups out of your township. Your solicitor, again, will advise you as to his opinion about those Supreme Court decisions. BET will show you the revised plans, and we have a traffic consultant here to address traffic issues as well. What is a fact is that 321 Norristown Road is a problem property. We have 75,000 square feet that is occupied by Berkadia. Their lease is up in 2027. We have 62,400 square feet adjacent to them, which is practically vacant. And Berkadia has made it clear that if the property is not revitalized, they will be leaving. And if they leave, you will have a blight, a property of about 25 acres that will be underutilized. And it's my opinion that you have a duty to do something about that. It's also my opinion that this is a perfect location for a mixed-use development that is proposed this evening with a medium rise apartment that is next to multifamily, which is Gwinnett Estates, next to a golf course, and next to a major interchange like Route 309. What is also a fact is that there is no conventional apartment building in Lower Gwinnett Township. It is the opinion of people that I heard 2 weeks ago that that is not appropriate in Lower Gwinnett. People have said things like an apartment building will destroy Lower Gwinnett culture by constructing apartments, that an apartment building with renters will change the makeup of Lower Gwinnett, that Lower Gwinnett high-end single-family houses are the only construction that should be considered, that an apartment building will be a voting block that will bring welfare people to Lower Gwinnett, and that people should rent in Upper Dublin until they can afford to move to Lower Gwinnett. That's what I heard at that neighbor meeting. What is also a fact is that the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said that you can't exclude housing types or people, and that you can't select people or housing types either. The last fact that I will suggest is that there is a housing crisis in Pennsylvania. The governor has issued many proclamations about the housing crisis. I will go through some of that, as well as the Montgomery County Planning Commission in their 2040 comprehensive plan. You do have rentals here in Lower Gwinnett. Some people might be surprised about that. They are rentals, but they are not a conventional apartment building. They are more like duplexes. They're 2 stories. They are restricted to 30 feet in height. But the inventory is old. It's from 1980 and 1971. We did get a message from a resident from Gwinnett Estates that said, they wrote an email to Michael actually today and said they recognize that they are renters now. And they recognize that it's a lifestyle choice, that people don't want to take care of their properties. And some people support redevelopment where development exists because it makes sense, as opposed to gobbling up open space. And that is our position this evening. So I have some slides I'll go through. Michael has some to show you the changes to the plans. We have Matt, as I said, and then we'll see what questions the board has and what the public has. So we have 3 parts. Number 1, we have in part 1, we have a property in need in order to avoid blight. Part 2, we have housing needs through Montgomery 2040 and the governor's publication. Part 3, Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said there's a responsibility for the fair share of every housing type in every municipality. Lower Gwinnett inventory has no modern apartment building. And part 4, BET has a thoughtful solution for this property. Next slide, please. Property need. Here's the property in question. It's 25.32 acres. As you can see, it's right next to 309. It has Old York Road Country Club to the rear, Gwinnett Estates multifamily, long-term care to the other side. It borders Norristown Road to the front. We do have residential houses across the street. Undeniably, those people will be affected by the redevelopment of this property. They are affected by anything that goes on this property. Next slide, please. This is a photograph. To the left is the Bercadia building. That's 75,000 square feet. The idea is to keep them here and redevelop the building to the right into the mid-rise apartment structure, as well as adding retail and or restaurant to the front of the building. Next slide. Housing needs. So Monco 2040 is a comprehensive plan that's put together by the Montgomery County Planning Commission. It's required by Pennsylvania law in order to have a guiding growth and physical development plan for the county. The Philadelphia region has a comprehensive plan, as do most of the 62 municipalities in Montgomery County. I know that Lower Gwinnett is also working on its comprehensive plan. So in the 2040 shared vision of Montgomery County's latest comp plan, they deal with things like highways, public transportation, flooding, trails, redevelopment trends, shopping centers, housing needs, large development impacts, natural systems, etc. Next slide, please. The 2040 goals is supporting housing choices. Why is this a goal? Because there's an increasing number of smaller households, people living alone and others who prefer to live in an apartment or a townhouse. How do we implement this goal according to the county? By supporting construction of additional permanent multifamily housing. Next slide, please. The county plan encourages the redevelopment of existing infrastructure. This is a goal because you're maintaining infrastructure where it exists. Many of the county's business parks are old and in need of reimaging and reinvestment. How do we implement this goal? By locating new development in growth areas or modernizing or adapting older office and business parks through zoning changes, infrastructure improvements, marketing, and private sector investment. That is what we are suggesting. Next slide, please. The county states that we should adapt to market conditions and demographics. More people are working from home and offices are being redesigned into smaller, more collaborative spaces. The office market is in transition. So to implement this goal, the county suggests that we work with local municipalities, developers, and property owners to redevelop vacant retail and office properties. We should convert vacant buildings into twins, townhouses, quadruplexes, duplexes, and other medium density housing. And the Urban Land Institute defines medium density housing as 12 to 16 units to the acre. Our proposal is 13 units to the acre. Next, we have Governor Josh Shapiro's Pennsylvania Housing Action Plan. He attempts to address the housing needs across urban, suburban, and rural communities. Pennsylvania faces a significant housing production challenge. For example, southeastern Pennsylvania will need approximately 206,000 new units over the next decade to meet anticipated housing demands. Next slide. The housing market snapshot. Pennsylvania has to increase its housing production by 18,500 units per year to meet projected future housing demand. And at the current rates, we look to fall short by 185,000 homes. More than half of the Pennsylvania housing stock is over 50 years old. It needs reinvestment and preservation. Next slide. There are 5 goals in the governor's plan. The first 2 are pertinent here, that we should build and preserve Pennsylvania's housing stock by investing in residential site infrastructure, mixed-use development, office to residential conversions, that we should modernize housing development regulations to reduce cost and timeliness and timelines by cutting red tape and modernizing permitting and zoning processes. Next slide, please. The strategic initiatives are to invest in residential site infrastructure, do office to residential conversions, and mixed-use development. Pennsylvania's ability to streamline local government regulations, and they want us to monitor expiration of affordable units. Part 3, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has a seminal case in the 1970s about fair share. Actually, it came directly from a case about apartments out of Chester County. Next slide, please. Oh, that's good. Right where we are. And it led to the exclusionary zoning and fair share doctrine. And it states a zoning ordinance may be exclusionary in its effect, either because it excludes a use from a municipality or makes only a token allocation of land available for its use. The fair share doctrine, which generally states that a zoning ordinance may be held invalid if it has an exclusionary effect. Next slide. And this is the case. Willistown versus Chesterdale Farms from 1975. The township amended its zoning ordinance to provide an area of 80 acres in the township on which apartments could be built. It contended that rezoning only 80 acres out of 11,589 constitutes a tokenism, an exclusionary land restriction. The court said, our view of this record convinces us that the township zoning ordinance, which provides for apartment construction in only 80 acres out of 11,589 acres in the township, constitutes to be exclusionary in that it does not provide for a fair share of the township acreage for apartment construction. Suburban municipalities within the area of urban outpour must meet the problems of population expansion into its borders by increasing municipal services and not by the practice of exclusionary zoning. This calculation is 0.69%. Next slide. 1970 Concord Township case says the prevention of newcomers is not limited to a total exclusion, but also selective admission. The Pennsylvania Supreme Court in this case discussed the responsibilities of municipalities on the fringe of urban area in dealing with expansive population pressures and stated, communities must deal with the problems of population growth. They may not refuse to confront the future by adopting zoning regulations that effectively restrict population to near present levels. It is not for any given township to say who may or may not live within its confines while disregarding the interests of the entire area. Next slide, please. The Jersey Supreme Court in 1975 spoke on this issue as well about total exclusion. The court said, we conclude every municipality must, by its land use regulations, presumptively make realistically possible an appropriate variety and choice of housing. More specifically, presumptively, it cannot foreclose the opportunity of the classes of people mentioned for low and moderate income housing, and its regulations must affirmatively afford that opportunity, at least to the extent of the municipality's fair share of the present and prospective regional need, therefore. Next slide, please. So we took a look at Lower Gwyned's inventory and the tax map in your 6,016 acres of land. And you have 4 districts that allow multifamily, and this is outside the elder family. This is outside your MF1 or your MF2, 3, and 3A, which is your 2X communities and folkways. So outside your life care community. So you have your E, your MF1, your MR, and your F residential district. Next slide, please. Your E residential permits multifamily, and here we have the Hunt Club. Oh, the photo's not there. Next slide. Sorry, there we go. Okay. The Hunt Club. This is on Welsh Road. It is duplexes. It has a height limitation of 30 feet, obviously not a conventional apartment building. It was built in 1980. These are for rent, but it is not ADA accessible, at least on the second floor. These are rental units on the first and second floor. Next slide, please. In the MF1 multifamily district, we have the Meadows of Lower Gwynedd. This is located off Bethlehem Pike. These are 2-story townhouses. These are for sale. 30-foot restriction, built in 1971. Next slide, please. MF1 again, the Georgetown development, located off Old Penland Pike and Penn Ambler, built in the 1960s. These are garden-style duplex units. These are for sale, 30-foot restriction. Next slide. MR is your mixed residential development. This allows an assortment of garden style, multiplex, duplex, all kinds of family development, but there's only one district and it's the Gwynedd community, and it has townhouses and singles, and these are for sale. Next slide. Now, the F industrial district. This does allow for an apartment building. Last year, the board adopted an ordinance that allows in the mixed use development, an apartment building that is 45 feet tall, allows 43 units on this property, which is 59,000 and change. This equates to 0.02% of the land of the township where apartments are permitted, but not yet constructed. So we have a suggested solution on how to care for this property and redevelopment so you don't have blight, how to deal with the fact that there is not an apartment building in Lower Gwynedd Township in a way that we think is a thoughtful solution under the circumstances. So I'm going to call up Michael and let him take over.
Thanks, Kristen. And thanks for having us tonight. My name is Michael Markman. I'm the president of BET Investments. Next slide, please. So just quickly, I don't know if we've done this before for you, but just to go over kind of a representative project, 555 Flats in Horsham. Next slide, please. So it's basically we build apartments in two different ways. One is kind of like a resort hotel, and the second is like a boutique hotel. This one's more like a resort hotel. So the idea is when you go home, you feel like you're on vacation. You feel like you're kind of leaving everything outside and you're walking in. So this is built like a resort. So second, next slide, please. This is our courtyard, which will be similar to what we're proposing here. It's got a pool, it's got bocce, recreation areas, lots of areas to bring people together. It's got fire pits, it's got barbecues, and creates kind of a multifamily environment where people can come together if they live alone so they don't feel alone. Next slide, please. This is just another shot of the courtyard, which once again is a resort style pool that allows people to, enjoy the summer. Next slide. Another picture of the pool. And if you see in the background, we have a lot of indoor outdoor areas. So you can pull up the windows and enjoy the inside and the outside during at least, 3-4 months out of the year. Fire pits, as I mentioned. Next slide. This is one of our common rooms. And actually this room has a current events group that meets every day, which is a group of people in their 70s who kind of sit around and talk about current events. And it's grown to about 20 or 30 people. This is a typical unit, generally luxury vinyl tile floors, quartz countertops, tile backsplashes, kind of just modern amenities, usually 9 to 10 foot ceilings. Next slide. And one thing keep in mind, people that live in our apartments, they don't even have to change a light bulb. They don't have to take care of anything. All they have to do is pay their rent, and we do everything else. So this kind of shows a 1-bedroom apartment with the kitchen in the background and the living room closer to us. Once again, another picture of the apartment. Bedrooms, which we always have a king bed that can fit in the bedroom. Bathrooms with usually either marble or tile floors. We do floor to ceiling tile in the shower, which is kind of luxurious look, and nice countertops and cabinets. So this is the property. It's currently on an existing signalized intersection. It is not a greenfield. It is a commercial property that is having major issues, as a lot of office properties are. Let me repeat, it's not a greenfield. It's a commercial property that in its current form is having issues. As you see, to the right of it is the Axe facility. Behind it is Old York Road Country Club. And then the left is the ship property. So what we did is we had a lot of meetings prior to last week, and we listened to what everybody said to us, and we made changes to the plan. And these slides, if you look at the left, it's what we originally had. And if you look to the right, it's what we have now. So let me just start with the residential density. We originally came in with 5-story residential building. We have since reduced that to a 4-story residential building. It was 15 acres maximum density, and now it's down to 13.5 acres maximum density. We had originally a 10-foot front paving setback off of Norristown Road. There was objections to that. So we've taken that to a 75-foot front paving setback for Norristown Road. And as you see, what that allows us to do is to preserve the trees along Norristown Road. So as anyone who's driven by sees, it's on a hill, and then the trees are on the hill. So it'll have not a huge visual impact from the road. And that allows us to preserve all the existing trees. We originally came in, we asked for a 50-foot front building setback. People objected to that, so we've increased that to a 100-foot front building setback. So the effect of that is pulling the buildings further off of Norristown Road. There was objections that the original plan seemed like a wall of retail with its back to the road. We listened to that, and what we have done is split the retail into 2 different pods. And this is 46,000 square feet of retail. By comparison, we own the Giant Anchor Shopping Center down the street, which is double that size. So it's only half. It's actually less retail than just the Giant store itself. So it's not a tremendous amount of retail, but what we find is when we have retail on the site, it's good for the office building. It's good for the surrounding community because it integrates the project with the surrounding community. And it allows our people and our residents of the residents of the apartments and the office building to not have to get in their car to, let's say, go to a grocery store. And maybe we'll do a small grocery store here, hopefully some restaurants, coffee shops, service type things. So when you have all these different uses on the site, you eliminate trips off the site where people don't have to get in their car. And, when people have to drive during the day, they don't want to drive later. So this allows them to walk over to do these sort of things. The other thing, it's been brought up about Bethlehem Pike and the retail there. This retail won't be competitive with Bethlehem Pike. It's 46,000 square feet. So let's say 20,000 square feet would be a grocery store, which first of all would not fit on Bethlehem Pike. There's not any spaces that are big enough for that. And then the remainder of the retail, 26,000, we're really targeting national tenants. And the reason we can target national tenants is because we're right off of 309. So it's got great infrastructure right there, where Bethlehem Pike is probably more regional and local tenants. And keep in mind, we've owned the Giant Shopping Center. I do have one vacancy there, which is the old children's clothing patch, which I'm currently negotiating a lease. But during our ownership, which goes back to like 1999, we've generally been like 96, 97% leased. So with a modern shopping center as that was and something like this, we've been successful at keeping it full. Going a little further, once again, 5-story residential originally with 350 units. We've now gone down to 4-story residential, which is 278 units. We've slimmed it down a bit. There's also 10% affordable or attainable, which we'll get to. And just so you know, the existing D1 building height is 60 feet. So right now on this commercial site, you can build a 60-foot building and you can build screens around your HVAC for another 10 feet. So visually right now, you can build 70 feet on this property, 70 feet of height. What we are proposing under this district is a height of 55 feet. So the original was 60 feet. We are going down to 55 feet. And we have 10 feet for kind of architecture, which you'll see what we did with the architecture, really just architectural embellishments to make it look nicer. So just looking at this, these are the changes we've made based on the feedback we've gotten. So that slide describes this. So the next slide, please. I'm going to hand this over to Peter Clellan to do the next few slides. He's our Vice President of Development.
Thanks, Michael. Good evening. So this slide is just an enhanced version of the current plan that Michael described from the previous slide, with a few more images added for certain areas of the site with the redevelopment. Michael mentioned the tree save area along Norristown Road that we've implemented in this plan. And in the lower left corner is a picture of how we intend to even further enhance that area with the trail and some lower story plantings, because a lot of what's out there is more upper story trees. And then in the rear of the property towards the country club, we're proposing a pollinator garden type area, fields, meadows, that type of development. So we've put some representative imagery up there for what that should turn out like. And then on the lower right-hand side of the page, we have shown, it was requested in an earlier meeting that we reevaluate the emergency access, secondary emergency access that we originally had proposed near the intersection of Norristown Road and the 309 ramp to other areas of the site. We've been speaking with AXE ownership about an emergency access interconnection between the two properties. And you'll see highlighted there on the right side of the page, sort of the green and white striped area. And in the lower right-hand corner is a picture of a similar trail that we've implemented elsewhere at another property, where the left and right of the sidewalk area is structurally supportive for fire and emergency access equipment, but then also provides a nice walking trail in the middle of it. We were then also requested, subsequent to our meeting with AXE last week, to provide a better reference image with the, with the current plan overlaid on an aerial that better shows how and where that trail, that emergency access connection, would connect to the AXE driveway system. This is a large blow up for context in the more larger region. And then the next slide is a little bit closer in. Same imagery, but again, just tries to attempt to show where that emergency access could connect to the existing driveway on the Axe property without interfering with any of their parking or other facilities that they have there. Blow-ups of all the images from the previous page. And then we will jump into the architecture, which I will hand back to Michael.
Thank you. So this is an image from Norristown Road, which shows the tree save area. We've actually, if you look at you have the pointer, Pete, just like, I guess you really can't see it anyway. But if you look at the kind of the left-hand side, yeah, hopefully. Yeah. So we basically lighten the trees there. You can see what the retail would look like from the road, but there would be trees there and there'll be additional plantings in that location. Also, the entrance drive, you can kind of see what you'll see from the apartment building in the back, from Norristown Road to the apartment building. Next slide, please. So this is kind of coming on the property from the trail. Once again, to the left, it's kind of the larger retail building, and to the right is a smaller retail building. And then in the rear is the apartment building. As you can see, the parking garage, as was requested by the golf course, is put in the middle, so you can't see it from anywhere except probably the Bercadia building. And then what we've done with the building is basically made it almost look like 4-story townhouses that are connected together. So residential style roofs, breaking up the architecture very, very frequently, so it doesn't look like a straight pattern, kind of like the Bercadia building currently looks, and really looking of a more residential nature and broken up. So it's visually stimulating. It's not a straight kind of just simple plan. It's more elaborate and more interesting. So next slide. Just really another angle from where if you were standing in front of what we hope to be the grocery store, kind of looking at the building. This would be the Bercadia building. And then you can see the majority of the apartment building. Next slide. So Axe had asked us to do a view from their property. So this is what the apartment building would look like through the tree area on their building. Once again, as you can see, it's down to 4 stories, residential style roof, broken up with lots of different, we looked for different types of materials that are often seen in this area, a lot of stone, a lot of wood plank looking materials. Trying to match what's local. Next slide, please. This would be the entrance feature to the property. So when you come on, where you get into the apartments, really this would be the lobby area. We usually have about 10 to 20,000 square feet of amenity space, which comes, why do we need 278 units? Well, to be able to build the kind of amenity space that we need, you need that many units to support it. So to have pools, to have the fire pits, to have the recreation areas, to have the gyms. We have pods for people to work in. We have podcasting rooms, like all kinds of, we have dog wash stations. It basically dog parks. So basically to do all that on this kind of multi-use property, we just need, we can reduce the number of units. And then we've also been, asked to look at an attainable number of units, which also factors into that number. But if you look at the materials, lots of stone, and we consistently stick with what we show to townships. And I can show you, if you want, renderings of what we've showed townships and what was actually built, and they always look the same. Next slide, please. Just another look on the longer expanse of the building. So once again, if you had looked back at the Bercadia building, it's just like a straight window line with no breakups. This building has breakups, I don't know, every 50 to 100 feet. It's got different roof lines. It's got different balcony lines. It's got different materials. So essentially it looks like 4-story townhouses or 4-story homes kind of lined up next to each other to break it up so it doesn't seem so large. This is the retail space, which is, we've attempted to match it and attempted to match some of the architecture in the area. And that's the other retail building where we hope to have a small market. Okay, now I'm going to hand it over to Matt Hammond from Traffic Planning and Design for the traffic.
Good evening. So as you've been aware, over the last year and a half, there's been numerous discussions with respect to traffic. Obviously, as that is a hot button for the municipality as well as the residents. We have conducted significant amounts of data collection throughout the last year and a half. In addition to that, I was also involved in the Springhouse Innovation Park. So luckily, we have data that has been compiled over the last 7 years for this area, so we're able to kind of compare and contrast the data. What this slide shows is where we would project the additional traffic associated with the development to come from and go to. What this looks at is if the office complex were fully occupied, 100% leased, versus the development that's being proposed, the difference in the amount of traffic and where that traffic will be coming from and going to. And I mentioned again that over the last 7 years, we've been collecting data, traffic data along Norristown Road, 309, the 5 Points intersection. And as a result, we're able to project where we anticipate this traffic to come from and go to. So what you'll see is that along Norristown Road, west of 309, we project about 34% of the additional traffic associated with this development to travel on that roadway. That equates to, in the morning peak, about 45 trips, in the afternoon peak, about 56 trips. So essentially one additional trip every minute during that one peak hour in the morning, one peak hour in the afternoon. I want to also define a trip. So sometimes it's confused as the additional vehicles. While it is an additional vehicle, a trip is essentially one vehicle entering and that same vehicle exiting. While that's one vehicle, that's 2 trips. So we're adding, like I said, 45 trips along Norristown Road in the morning and 56 in the afternoon. You also see that we've looked at Tennis Avenue, both north and south of Norristown Road east of Tennis Avenue, and then what we project to access Route 309. One of the comments that's come up is residents feel that the amount of traffic we're projecting to actually access 309 is low, especially to the north. And I, quite frankly, in the very beginning of this process, I was slightly surprised at that number as well. But if you look at the historical data for vehicles that are traveling on Norristown Road and actually going north on 309, it is a very low number in comparison. That 2% represents about 80 trips in the morning versus 1,100 trips that are currently on Norristown Road in that area. We have, as I mentioned, conducted numerous traffic studies. Our first traffic study was conducted in March of 2025. As part of that study, it was submitted to the township for review, and we received a review letter in June of 2025 from the township's traffic consultant. We went through that review letter, addressed the comments, and provided a response letter which addressed the comments in question, as well as a revised traffic study in February of this year. Next slide, please. One of the things that also came up was the fact that there's a significant amount of development going on in the neighboring municipality of Upper Dublin. What this slide shows are the improvements that are proposed at the Maple Glen Triangle. You'll notice to the left of the plan is the approved and currently under construction 72-unit townhome development that has been referred to as the Goodman Tract. To the right in the blue and yellow is approximately 48 or 53 residential units, townhomes, that was approved and under construction right now by pay-owned builders. But in the middle, and what the important part of this slide is the fact that there's a significant number of roadway improvements being proposed and will be slated for construction in 2028 by PennDOT. These improvements have been contemplated for a number of years, but are now being implemented due to the fact that there was an injection of other improvements completed or proposed by both of those residential tracts. There's widening proposed not only on Welsh Road, but Norristown Road and Limekiln Pike. There's traffic signal improvements going on. In addition to that, next slide, please. There are improvements being funded as part of the approval of the Goodman Tract at the intersection of Butler and Norristown. This is a concept plan that was prepared by the Upper Dublin Township Traffic Engineer, showing the improvements that are currently under design and to be implemented here, hopefully in late 2026, if not early 2027. But if you combine that with the previous slide, there's a significant number of roadway improvements occurring on Norristown Road between Butler Pike and just east of Welsh Road to the tune of nearly $24 million worth of roadway improvements. These improvements will occur or currently under construction, but will span out and extend out to the year 2030. But there's a significant number of roadway improvements that are being contemplated and being constructed through that area. Obviously, the township's aware of the improvements that were done at the 5 Points intersection over the last couple of years. So really what we tried to do was concentrate our efforts on what could be done, if anything, between Tennis Avenue and 309 ramps to address not only the traffic associated with the proposed development, but also address some of the concerns that have been raised by the residents in the township to date based on existing conditions. And some of those improvements, I don't know if the next slide. Yes, well, some of those improvements involve vehicular improvements on the roadway, but also a significant number of pedestrian improvements. For instance, going back to the vehicular improvements, we're proposing to widen out the existing signalized driveway serving the development to provide for 2 lanes to access Norristown Road. We're proposing to extend the left turn lane on eastbound Norristown Road to Tennis Avenue. We are proposing to extend the left turn lane into the proposed driveway. And then from a pedestrian standpoint, we're looking to provide a pedestrian network to connect the existing trail that ends just east of the existing driveway and extend that through the frontage, not only through the property, but along the frontage on Norristown Road, cross over to 309 ramps, under the 309 overpass, then back over to terminate at the ship property. What this slide here shows is a depiction, and this is not the intersection in question, but this is exactly the same type of treatment that we would propose to cross under 309 overpass. It's a project that is under construction now. It was recently proposed or approved by PennDOT. But what it shows is essentially being able to create that pedestrian network to get you from the east side of 309 to the west side and vice versa by providing a safe pedestrian passage under the 309 bypass to connect those 2 areas. Next slide. Yep. And I'm going to turn it back over to Michael.
So before I get into this, the current office property that's there, and I pulled this off the Montgomery County website, but this is just kind of produces for the township $8,857 of taxes. And then for the school district, about $186,000 of taxes. So what we're proposing, the 278 units, 46,000 square feet of retail, which also includes the office, the total taxes generated for the Wissahickon School District would be $1,152,000, less the school district costs, because they're under every study and every apartment complex we've done, we're predicting about 16 public school kids for this property. That would cost the school district $416,000, less the existing office revenue, which is currently. So the net yearly revenue to the school district, so this is the increase in revenue to the school district, would be $651,000. And so the school district would get an extra $651,000. We've had discussions with the business manager for the school district, and he's agreed with our numbers. Lower Gwinnett Township, the total taxes generated would be $286,000, less township costs of $220,000. Not a lot of township costs here, but we basically took what it costs for each resident in the township right now, and we use those costs minus the existing office. So the net yearly revenue to the township would be $70,000 as opposed to, right now it's about $8,600. So basically $651,000 net to the school district above what they're getting now, and $70,000 net to the township above what they're getting now. Next slide, please. So this is the workforce housing intention. We've allocated 10% of the constructed units as workforce housing at 100% of the median income for Montgomery County. What does that mean? That means that the one bedroom, the approximate income level would be $80,300. So the maximum monthly rent would be approximately $2,000, where the market rent for that one bedroom would be $2,500. The two bedroom units, the approximate income level would be about $100,000. The maximum monthly rent would be $2,583 as compared to about $3,000, which would be the market rents. So 10% of the units you see will be slightly discounted. And this is an attainable housing element that just makes it slightly more affordable for the 10% of the units. Next slide, please. So we keep hearing from neighbors and everybody else that the project will change Lower Gwinnett. So I think, you know, I understand that people are not used to this type of development. I understand there's fear involved with this, but let's look at it. First of all, the property is currently developed for a commercial use, a failing commercial use, but a commercial use. And we're trying to save Berkadia and obviously build an apartment building. This property is a commercial property built next to a major highway. As you saw, 27% of all the traffic is getting on 309. A large amount of the traffic is going in the opposite direction of Lower Gwinnett. It's on the edge of the township. It's a commercial property. And this is generally where commercial properties are built, next to major infrastructure like 309. And 25% of the traffic is going to use 309. Then we looked at the demographics for Lower Gwinnett as compared to the demographics for our nearest apartment complex, Promenade at Upper Dublin. So basically, we looked at everybody that lives at Promenade at Upper Dublin, and we looked at everybody that lives in Lower Gwinnett. And this is what we found. The median age in Lower Gwinnett is 49 years old. The median age at the Promenade of Upper Dublin is 50 years old. So basically the same. The 65 and older population in Lower Gwinnett is 29.1% of the population here. The 65 and older population at the Promenade of Upper Dublin is 36%. So it skews older than the demographic here. And the median household income in Lower Gwinnett is $139,615. The Promenade at Upper Dublin, the median household income is $150,000. The average household income in Lower Gwinnett is $160,000. The average household income at the Promenade of Upper Dublin is $209,221. So to say that this project would dramatically change the future of Lower Gwinnett, when essentially, other than the 10% attainable, which I'm not including because Promenade doesn't have that, is basically a very similar population base that occupies these type of apartments as compared to the people that currently live in Lower Gwinnett. What it does, though, is allows the people that currently live in Lower Gwinnett, who it all matches here, it gives them a place to live near their house that's luxurious. They don't have to change a light bulb. They don't have to do anything. We pay the taxes. We change the light bulbs. We take care of the property. We have social gatherings. We have people that get together. And it's a lifestyle choice that currently does not exist in Lower Gwinnett Township. And the last thing, this is a commercial property currently. And I'm just going to go back to the same thing because they're saying it's so big it's going to change Lower Gwinnett. First of all, the apartment building is set back from the road. You saw the views. It's not going to be seen dramatically from the road. The apartment architecture is broken up, so it's not immense looking. It's broken up into sections. The current height in the zoning is 60 feet plus 10 feet for screening, 70 feet tall. Our proposed height in zoning is 55 feet and 10 feet for architectural features, 65 feet tall. So in fact, compared to the current zoning, it's actually shorter. So what everybody is saying, the project will change Lower Gwinnett. It's a similar population. It's a building that it can be lower than the existing zoning, and it's a commercial property that's just being redeveloped and repurposed. And that's our presentation. Thank you.
Please step away. Thank you for the presentation. I have seen the presentation a number of times. I think the last time I saw it was over the summer at Gwinnett Estates. So it does look like it had changed dramatically. I just want to go back and I have a couple questions, and I don't know if you can answer or if staff. Just about the communication to the school district. I know that you said you talked to the business
Manager for the school district.
business manager. So they are aware of this project. Did they give us, the township, any feedback previously on the previous plan? I know this plan just was submitted in February.
Yes, so if this all goes forward, we'll check in with the school district again. But last year, we did check with the school district after BET had presented them with information. And they looked at it, they compared it to developments in Upper Dublin, just to confirm the number of school students that they expected. At that point, that last year, there were 350 units proposed in the apartment building. Now it's down to 278. So this was the 350 unit. They were estimating that there would be 21 students. And so the school, the business manager, Tim Bricker, who I think is who Mr. Markman was referring to, was saying, maybe each year 20 to 30, even estimating higher from that. And that he said, based on the information, we feel we will be okay with the increased student population.
Okay. And you talked to them more recently?
It was probably 7, 8 months ago. And his big concern was for those, number of students, let's say 15 to 20, we just have a spot for the bus to be able to pick them up. That was his comment.
Okay. Next question I had, just really quick, is the tax revenue impact. Thank you for putting that slide up. I'm focused on the Lower Gwinnett Township. Do we know, and I don't know if we have done any kind of analysis because this is just coming before us, but with the vacant buildings right now, do we have any idea what our tax revenue is for those well, I think Bocata has one and the other one's vacant.
So the other one is vacant. Where it gets harder to compare is we don't know right now the names of the businesses that used to be located. If you
Yeah.
could give them to us, that's what we need to get all the business taxes.
Okay.
So we're stuck there. We can get the real estate taxes, much like Michael did. But to get like the business privilege tax, they don't need addresses. I'm not quite sure why that's not helpful, but it isn't.
Is this slide just real estate tax revenue, or is this including the
Earned-
earned income tax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I was wondering.
I think it's just, I don't know. I think it's just real estate, but we have a report that's prepared by David Babbitt that it's been revised for the new plan. We'll submit it. But
So
these are
you're not certain if you're projecting the earned income tax credit of the potential
The
individuals.
study last year did. David Babbitt.
then it
study.
does. It does.
It
If that's the
does.
case. Yes.
Okay. And so
We were just going to do a little fact checking on our own of what the
Absolutely.
taxes actually collected in years past. We did look at the assessed value for the property now. So as is, and from 2019 to 2025, it decreased something like $80,000 in the assessed value. So then the tax rates for the school district and the township are applied to that. And which is no surprise. All of the office properties are getting reassessed downward, and those are when the offices are occupied. So having an empty building, it's just going to keep reducing.
Okay. I wanted to ask, thank you, Mr. Markman. I wanted to ask our traffic engineer, Chad, would you just come up and kind of walk us through this is the first time we're hearing kind of the traffic report and our traffic study. I know that I don't think that you've had a full opportunity or have you weighed in already?
As Matt indicated in his presentation, a traffic study was submitted to the township in the spring of last year, which we reviewed and provided comments, I believe, in June, with a number of technical comments that we wanted to be addressed in terms of how the analysis was performed, and also additional traffic improvements that we wanted considered in addition to what they had initially proposed. They've recently, as Mr. Hammond indicated, resubmitted the traffic study along with a response to our comments, and we're going through that right now. And we'll we'll issue a letter for the upcoming planning commission and any future meetings after that.
So can you just walk us through, just for everybody who's here present tonight, their awareness of like the process? They do a traffic study, which is a requirement.
Correct.
And then how does it go through the process?
Well, our office reviews it. Like I said, we've already reviewed it once and we'll review it again. If the project moves forward, we'll continue to review it as part of, the conditional use and land development phases. If the project moves forward, they're also required to get a highway occupancy permit from PennDOT. PennDOT will also review their traffic studies. The applicant has already submitted a preliminary scoping application to PennDOT since they've proposed a conditional use application that then enables them to start the PennDOT process. So they recently submitted a scoping application to PennDOT to get PennDOT's input on the scope of the study and improvements that they've already identified to get some preliminary comments. So if the project moves forward, PennDOT will have several review cycles where they'll review their study, the proposed improvements, how they're designed, and typically our office and PennDOT copy each other on our review letter, so both are aware of what comments are being issued from each. And typically PennDOT takes the municipal reviews into consideration when they prepare their reviews.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That's all the questions I have. I'm going to open it up to the board for any additional questions for the applicant and for our staff.
I just a question. So there's a statement earlier that stated that Bercadia's lease is up in 2027, and if the building is still vacant, they would leave. Have we spoken with Bercadia to confirm that?
So last year, when this application was before the board, this was a little bit after the open house, so late winter, early spring. Township staff did reach out to Bercadia to find out what they thought of the new development and what their plans were if the proposed development went ahead and if it didn't. And they did say that they are concerned about the office building next to them being empty, and if it stayed that way, they would leave. If this development goes forward, then they intended to stay. So yes, they confirmed that.
And the only thing I can confirm is they're in the market looking at other locations. So they're trying to make a decision.
And so if they don't stay and they leave, do you have any contingent plans if we do say we move forward with this?
We just had to figure out a reuse of that building. So not at this time. We were hoping that we could keep them in that spot. And we've had discussions with them and proposals with them that have kind of been waylaid for a while. So, but we're talking to them on probably a monthly basis.
Additional questions?
Just earlier, your attorney had stated that gave a summary of Monco 2040 and provided certain goals from the governor, and just basically was your understanding, summarizing your understanding of that. But there were no sites or nothing to direct us where to look. Could you just provide I know it's in Monco 2040, but I'm sure that's a long document. Just so we can have a look and see exactly where you're pulling the information from.
Yeah, I summarized because they are long documents. I could point you in the general direction, but it's throughout those documents as far as the revitalization. Monco 2040 nails it in certain areas. The governor's plan does have sections because the governor goes through revitalization through rezoning processes and streamlining the state and local government, having one zoning document across the board. But I could hone in on the areas that I think are pertinent and what I cited in here for you.
Okay, that
It's
would,
a lot of information, but I can direct you to where it is.
yeah, that'd be great, because two people can interpret one
Oh.
writing differently. So it's just something for us to take a look at, just to make sure that we're going in the same direction.
Yep, no problem.
I had some questions about the proposed amendment to the ordinance, and I don't know if you want to do that now or do. I had can everyone hear me? On building height, and I don't know if this is better to
I don't
your
know.
attorney or the staff, but in the code as it's currently written, the maximum height for dwelling, building, or other structures erected or enlarged in an MF3 multifamily residential district is 30 feet, not exceeding 2 stories. The proposed amendment includes various building heights for multifamily apartment buildings to not exceed 4 stories, an office building not to exceed 3 stories, and all other buildings and structures shall be 35 feet, not exceeding 2 stories, which is different than the 30 feet here with 2 stories. So how does the proposed amendment, the height, conflict or read in with the current height on MF3?
We'll take a look at that as we review it with your planning commission. I believe it's the mixed use component that has certain criteria that allows certain things, but as far as the details of the ordinance, we'll go through that.
Okay, yeah, because I have some concerns that the overarching, like the 127606, there's some conflicts with what's proposed in, the other structure catch-all and
Mhm.
dwellings, and what's proposed for the multifamily apartment and office buildings.
Sure. Any comments that the supervisors have, I'm sure if you pass them along to staff, we could go through those, make sure the planning commission and staff pass them along to us and they get incorporated into any revisions.
Can I make sure I understand the question? So I think you're distinguishing between, so it's the height in the current MF3 district is for the housing, essentially, because that's only, there is not a mixed use development that's currently permitted in the MF3 district. So you're just comparing the existing height for those structures with the new, there's several different heights that's only allowed in mixed use development. Are you kind of asking how that all would work in practice?
Right, yes, exactly, Mimi. It's so under permitted uses, which is 1276.02, I think the applicant's proposing adding this, multifamily apartment and these other, proposed uses as E. But then there's a general rule for height for any MF3 that falls under 1276, which is 2 stories. So if we have a use under E that's multifamily apartments, office buildings, what have you, we have a general building height that includes dwellings, buildings, or other structures.
Andrea, I think what is getting confused is that the E is the mixed use development. So anything under E applies to the mixed use development, not the uses above.
Yes, yeah, no, I hear you. But then you have E, 127602E. I would think that 127606 would apply to 127602E. And same thing with development standards, 127608 for density would apply to E. So when you make a special height and density rules for multifamily apartment or what have you, under E, I'm concerned about conflicting. I get that you could go down and read it. Okay, this is only applying for, this, but you could read it another way and it's conflicting with the more umbrella rule in 127606. That's my concern.
We'll take a look at it.
Thank you.
Sure.
You want to talk about the rest now, or you want to just provide? them in
No,
writing?
yeah, I'm
We'll
good for now.
provide them in
Thank you.
writing? Okay. Any additional comments from the board? Seeing none, we can open it up to public comments. These are comments and questions or feedback on the proposed plan. You just come up and state your name and address.
Hi, Danielle. Good to see you.
It's good to see you, Mr. Siegel.
Keith Siegel, 1139 Walnut Farm Road. Pleasure to be here. I think that there are, at least for me, two concerns that I'd love to be addressed, considered, and it's certainly not going to happen this evening, I presume. And that is, when we're talking about the additional traffic flow coming from this proposed use, on an island by itself, maybe I'm not so concerned, but we're also taking into account, or we need to take into account, what's about to unload for all of us with the new J&J facility with 4,000 workers and 500 full-time employees when the building is complete. That is a lot of people. That is a lot of traffic. That is a lot of cars. So that is a huge consideration that I haven't heard addressed yet, but I've got something coming from the west of me. I got something coming from the east of me, and it's going to come together somewhere around Sunnytown Pike, Bethlehem Pike, or the Route 309 artery. And that is not a beautiful proposition for any of us based on what I'm seeing in the moment. And the other question that I have for BET, excuse me, is the comparison was made with the promenade at Upper Dublin, both on residential type, age, and cost. I think that what's being proposed, and again, I could be corrected, which is totally fine. I'm not sure that that's of equal weight or of equivalency. I think the Horsham Flats would be a better equivalency, because by age, I heard 65 or something like that is what the promenade represents. But if we're talking about the flats and replicating what's happened in Horsham, that number skews very differently by age, typically by income level, both on median and average. So I'd like that to be explored as well. And I thank you for hearing me out. And again, my big concern, as I said, to the left and to the right, we got a lot of cars coming our way, a lot of traffic, and I'd like that to be considered. I thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. I think you were next. You can come on up. You just have to state your name and your address.
My name is Landon Woodward. I live at 765 Tennis Avenue. It's very close to where this is being proposed. I guess when looking at all this, my big concern was that the zoning change being proposed is for to be changed to MF3, which is the same as Gwinnett Estates, and then the other ordinance is to change MF3. So now you're changing two properties, not just one. And, we live right across the street from that property as well. And this seems like something completely different than anything else in the township right now. And so I'm not sure why they're including another property. And that being said, we don't have anything like this, and I'm not sure that we need it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? If you want to speak, I'm sorry that you have to come up to the microphone, speak into the microphone, and just state your name and address.
Okay, good evening. My name is Carol Jones. I live at 390 Mansion Avenue in Lower Gwinnett. And I should probably, I don't know how you do this. Do it this way. Because I don't want to talk to you. I need to. I mean, I really came here to address the crowd tonight. As I said, my name's Carol Jones. I live in Penland. And I want to give a little bit of background on Lower Gwinnett, which, as I look at around the room, and I did attend the open house that they did back last year and have been keeping up on the project that's been going on. And I also wanted to just give a little background on Lower Gwinnett. So let's start with 1698. I know we're going back a long time, but I think we need to understand where we came from to understand where we need to go. So in 1698, Gwinnett was established. It was Upper Gwinnett and it was Lower Gwinnett. Upper Gwinnett started developing really quickly. North Wales was a hub for trading, and it grew very quickly on that end of it. Lower Gwinnett didn't. It was slower. It was just vast open space until 1850. In 1850, we got the railroad. So the railroad came down and it went through the southern part of Lower Gwinnett Township. And there were a lot of people that could now ride on their way to Upper Gwinnett or on the way up, and they could actually see how beautiful Lower Gwinnett really was. And they did fall in love with the land. A lot of people fell in love with the land. Now, a lot of you, I went to the last meeting, so I listened to the meeting again. And when I listened to it the second time, I wrote down the names and the addresses. So most of the people that spoke in the last meeting, they haven't been here 50 years. I've been coming to these meetings more than 50 years. So it's been a long time. My aunt's sitting here. My family has been here. We're on 7 generations. So let's get back a little bit. So the railroad comes through, and many of you might not know this, but the trolley ran from Chestnut Hill down, right, Mark? Down Sumneytown Pike. And the trolley was there. And people don't want to center in Springhouse or whatever, but we had that before. So once the railroad came down, Lower Gwinnett still lagged behind in what was happening in Ambler, in Fort Washington, and up there in the North Wales area. So it wasn't until the late 1870s that Lower Gwinnett started to develop and change. Now, it was all open land, all vast open land. And then you had people like, if you live on Merrill, anybody live up in the Merrill area? You live up on Merrill Street. Then Mr. Merrill came in there and he started a sheep farm. Most of the farms in Lower Gwinnett, what people don't know, were livestock farms. So they had a sheep farm out there, and it was a real lavish farm. And he was a wealthy business owner. So what happened in the late 1870s is that 2 types of people started coming to Lower Gwinnett. One, it was wealthy business owners that were running businesses up and down the railroad. 2, it was the person that came by and said, oh my God, this land is so beautiful, I want to live here. So then after 1877, when Mr. Merrill came, this is when we're going into, like, if you live in Springhouse Farms, some of you may live in Springhouse Farms, and sometimes we call that the Ingersoll home. Well, there were several families from the Ingersolls that lived there, and that home wasn't built until till 1888. So what happened, and then what happened was Lower Gwinnett started to be developed. We had a gentleman by the name of Charles Ingersoll. A lot of us live on Ingersoll land, or we're on Ingersoll property. Mr. Ingersoll came from a wealthy family, and he was a builder, a builder of railroad, or the railroad building. And the Ingersolls were very wealthy people, but he didn't necessarily come here to run a business. He came here and he built his country home. Anybody live in Forest Hill? He built Forest Hill. He built Forest Hill back in 1894, and he built it as a summer home because it was so beautiful. And then what he did was he not only built that home and bought Forest Hill, he bought all the way from Brushtown Road, where you see Wissahickon, where you see, he bought all that end, and he loved that property, and he shared it with everyone. And they were here for generations. They were here. So he came here in 1894 and built that house. But then he bought his family, and the family came and they built another house. So if you go along Penland Pike, you'll see some of the Ingersoll homes that they built. Springhouse Farm. Many of you don't know Springhouse Farm. James Bond. James Bond was born there. Right, Mark? James Bond was born there. And James Bond's mother ended up going up street. She lived in the Springhouse Farm in the Ingersoll mansion, and she went uptown. And around 1904, the beginning of the 1900s, she bought Gwinnett Mercy. Well, 2 of the families.
Yeah, he died.
Okay, sorry about that. Sorry. So where was I? Let's see here. So Gwinnett Mercy. So so the Bonds lived there. The Bonds lived at Gwinnett Mercy until they sold it to Gwinnett Mercy College, which was later like 1947 when Gwinnett Mercy bought it. The reason I start with the
Yes.
I think it's probably the.
Am I doing this? Oh, okay. So the reason I'm saying this is because just talk. Okay. All right. The reason I'm saying this is because Ingersolls came here in 1904, 1905. My great grandfather came here in 1906. So when I look around here, my family's been here. We have 7 generations. I have over 40 members that are still living in Penland Village. And our family came up from Westmoreland County, Virginia, and we started building our homes and we started buying the land. Now, we couldn't buy land like Charlie Ingersoll could buy the land. But I remember as a kid, the Ingersolls were always, Mr. Sturgis was, well, if you live near Sturgis Court, Mr. Sturgis was always in the woods. I remember when Miss Ingersoll built that trail line out in Penland in which what's it, Penland Woods. Penland, is that what it's called? Penland Woods. See, that was different when I was a kid. When I grew up here, it was totally different. And I grew up here in the 50s. So my grandfather moved here in 1906. That's 120 years this year that my grandfather moved here. And he moved here because of the beauty of the land. He moved here for work and for education. But they meant to stay here. They loved Lower Gwinnett and they stayed here. That's why we have 7 generations here. My aunt's sitting here. She's 92 years old. She's still here. She's still in Lower Gwinnett. So Lower Gwinnett has changed dramatically over the years. So back when my grandfather came here, he always said, you know, under all is the land. And you need to protect the land and you need to appreciate where you came from. You need to appreciate where you came from or you'll never know where you're going to end up going. So then we come fast forward a little bit. So that's in the early 1900s. So in the early 1900s, we had Penland Village that was developing because there were a lot of people moving in. There were Black folks moving in from Westmoreland County and from Maryland that were coming up here at the end of the war to live. And then you had wealthy people that were coming also into Lower Gwinnett. So as the people started coming in there, they were big homes, but not a whole big population, but it started to grow. We had 4 schools in Lower Gwinnett at the time, back in the late 1800s. We had 4 schools in Lower Gwinnett Township. So around I'm gonna fast forward a little bit, around 1920 is when we built Springhouse Elementary School. And you go to Springhouse Elementary School? That's why I can tell whatever. We went to Springhouse Elementary School when it was K through 6. We went to, and then we went to Ambler High School, you know? So we went to the school, and when the school was built, it was because our population started to grow. And then if you take it back to just Lower Gwinnett, around 1927, 28, AmCan, if you ever heard of AmCan, where Amber Yards is, AmCan came in. So this is in the 1920s. Ambler had Keesby and Madison. So everything is still developing here. Lower Gwinnett catches on a little bit late. Lower Gwinnett was the one lagging behind. But then what happened is in 1947, we had Sharp and Doan. Mert Sharp and Doan came into the area. And in 1948, Leeds and Northbrook came into the area. And what happened was the population in our area started to grow. And people were moving into houses. And then after that came the 1950s. You know what happened in the 1950s? We had a huge baby boom. And the baby boom was also here in Lower Gwinnett Township. So what had happened is now you have a whole bunch of rich people that have come in and bought homes, or you have large homes on large tracts of land in Lower Gwinnett. But when the 1950s came, things needed to change, just like things always change. So what happened back in the 1950s is they started developing our neighborhood. There were more houses were built there. The southern end of Lower Gwinnett started to change. We call it Penn Ambler, where Danielle lives. That's where they started building homes because now these factories are around and people are going to be working there and people like to live, you know, close to where they were. So back in the 1950s, they started the building. And then when they showed up here, early 1960, what came about? Georgetown. Georgetown was an apartment complex. We thought that was massive. It was huge. You know why? We had never had an apartment complex like that before in Lower Gwinnett Township. It was something that was totally new for Lower Gwinnett, and there were a lot of units there. So that was back in the early 1920s, they said 1960s, but I could have sworn it was a little bit earlier than that. Then we come to the 1960s. The 1960s are when businesses started to come in. First of all, 309 Expressway, 1959. The North H Extension, 1957, something like 57, 59. They came in. So people started recognizing that Lower Gwinnett was actually here. Then you came, it was like 1963. What do we have? Roman Haas. Roman Haas came in. And then right next to Roman Haas, more products. 1964, more products came in. And what happened? We needed housing. These businesses showed up. There wasn't a lot of housing. The expressway came in. Anyhow, the trolley shut down in 1955. So we didn't have the trolley going up and down there. But in the 1960s, all these businesses started coming in and Lower Gwinnett started growing. But it was only in the southern part of Lower Gwinnett and Merle Hill. If Merle right off of Bethlehem Pike up by the dealership, the car dealership. Those are the two only areas that were developed in all Lower Gwinnett. Everything else was still vast land and maybe farmland. You had Springhouse Farm that was over here. Merle had shut down their farm. And then if you, from Springhouse here, all the way on the left-hand side of Sumneytown Pike, all the way to Brushtown Road, you had Grenlow Farm, which they raised steer. That didn't go out of business until the mid-1950s. That was still here. So it was basically this big farmland. But then we had to build, in the 1950s, this was going on and the population was increasing. What do we need? A new school. So what did? We built Wissahickon High School. And out of Wissahickon High School, then the Meadows came. They were apartments. They were right across the street from the apartments. And then in 1966, we had Folkways. Folkways came because Friends was given 64 acres. They were given 64 acres. The Quaker, the Friends house up there, they were given 64 acres. And they took that and they built Folkways. Folkways retirement apartments. This is the first time ever that something like that was in the area. Even all over Montgomery County. That was once again, a very new concept. It was apartments, but now we have retirement apartments that are going on. So Folkways came in with 230 units. That was my very first job. I worked at Folkways when I was in college. I was working in Folkways. So that was a very new housing unit. And then Gwinnett Mercy Academy had bought the land from the Boones, but back in they started a college, but it wasn't until 1968 that it became a 4-year school. It was a 2-year college. First, it started out with all women. My mom went there, I went there. It was all females. If you've been around long, remember Gwinnett Mercy College. But then Gwinnett Mercy came and it bought even more people. So between 1950 and 1970, our population tripled. That's in 20 years. The population in Lower Gwinnett tripled, but we were able to handle that. You work it out and you're able to handle that. Housing jumped 200%. 200%. And that was in like 3 or 4 years. In 3 or 4 years it happened. Because what happened was more developers started coming in or business people started coming into Lower Gwinnett Township. So in the end of 1970s, I know I'm going on, you guys. I'm into this history thing. In the end of the 1970s, I'm getting there, right? In the end of the 1970s is when the Ingersolls came to my father. Sturgis was still, they were getting old. There were more people. They were dividing up the land. They were moving on. And they said, you know what? We're getting ready to put this land up for auction, right? That we needed to buy it. The land I'm talking about, if you know where, is Penland Woods. It was Penland Woods, and it was Polo Club Estates. Total was about 110 acres between the two of them. So the developers started going in there to build, if you live on Hunt Seat and all that, to build Polo Club Estates. Polo Club Estates, there was a lot of adversity. We had never had anything like that. We all had small houses. There were only small homes on smaller tracts of land in Lower Gwinnett. Now you're building big houses on at least 1, maybe even 2 acres. This didn't start until the mid-1980s. So in the mid-1980s, that came up. At the same time that Polo Club was going up, we had Gwinnett Knoll. Gwinnett Knoll was huge. There was a lot of opposition. We thought it was a city. When Linda's in here, Linda Caligari spoke about they have 6 entrances, That's what a lot of people had opposition to. It was like a village up there. It was huge. So that's why our population went just the whack. What we didn't realize is how much open space we lost. Lower Gwinnett at that time had less than 20 acres of open space. We had none. So when we talk about our board and our past people, these people, our past board of supervisors and our planning and our zoning, they have worked really hard to make Lower Gwinnett be the way that it is. And because they live here and they're a part of it is why Lower Gwinnett is the way it is. So after Gwinnett Knoll and Polo Club Estates opened up, people freaked out because it was huge and we didn't have any open space. So as a result of that, back in the 1987 comprehensive plan, and now we're on 2026. But back in 1987, the main focus was us to have open space. So out of that open space, here comes new concepts, just like this we're talking about is a totally new concept. These are new concepts that we're talking about that came into Lower Gwinnett Township. First, the large parcels of land, you have 1 to 2 acre homes that were also being built. Then you have what they call cul-de-sacs. We didn't have cul-de-sacs in Lower Gwinnett. It was something totally new. But the reason we had the cul-de-sacs was because the developers gave up open space to put these houses. And then we had these little horseshoes. And then we had Gwinnett Hunt. Listen, I don't even, Gwinnett Hunt, where we were like, oh my God, density, the houses are smack. It was a new concept, but we were getting open space. And if you live over here on Chesterfield, there was, we've had discussions about every single development that went up in Lower Gwinnett and tried to make it as pleasing for the township so that we can continue on to have a great township that all of us can share and to be a part of. So then you had townhouses. We didn't know what townhouses were. And then, God forbid, carriage houses. I had never heard of a carriage house before they said, we're going to put carriage houses here because we're going to give up this for open space. So this is Lower Gwinnett looks like this, by design. Then we have the horseshoes where there's like one street up on DeKalb Pike, the developments up there. And then recently you had the mixed use center that's on Bethlehem Pike. By the Wawas out there, where there's a retail down the bottom and apartments are sort of like this, but on a smaller scale. So that was something different. Lower Gwinnett has always changed what the buildings were, how they were built, where they were built. And you know what? Lower Gwinnett's always going to change. It's just that we need people to help through the process. People that understand that it's not going to be the same, but to make it as good as you can. So what happened was, I was in this last meeting, and there were a lot of people up here talking about, we didn't want Lower Gwinnett to change. It's going to change. I can tell you that. My family's been here for 120 years, and it's going to change. Neighborhoods are going to change. We don't want more people here. You're going to have more people here. We want Lower Gwinnett to be the same as what it is. We don't want it to change. Hello. It was so different before you got here, and it's not going to be the same when you leave here. Lower Gwinnett is not going to stay what it always was. I, too, would have loved to. There was a lady, she might be in here, that sat in the last meeting and said, I drive down Penland Pike and pinch myself of the beauty. Well, I live a block off of Penland Pike. And in the summertime, when I sit in my yard, I want to cry because I hear the traffic going up and down Penland Pike and up and down. But just like this is a traffic issue, it's regional. Those people aren't coming to go to my house. Those people are coming to go somewhere else. Just like they said, we can't do anything about the regional traffic. You have two things. You do like I do. I sit in my backyard and said, Carol, nothing you can do. You just accept it or move. And I'm not going anywhere. So I'm just going to have to accept that the traffic came in there. But the fact that people are, and I want to come to the meeting, the next meeting that we have next week, when we talk about the use, because there were a whole bunch of people that were talking about Lower Gwinnett and the uses and that we needed to use and things that we needed to change. And some of the remarks like, you're going to outvote us? Are you kidding me? If they're in here now, I wish they would come up and speak this again, because it's the most ridiculous things that people are talking about when they think Lower Gwinnett is not going to change. You can't keep Lower Gwinnett. It wasn't like this before you got here, And it's not going to be like this if you're here long enough. It's just a different place. So I don't want to address people because I do have the notes of everybody that really talked, but basically, you have questions for me? No, I came here to talk.
This is, no, I think this is
You
great.
came up here
No,
to
no,
talk.
no. Listen, I think it's great to hear the history of Lower Gwinnett. I think it's something that I am benefiting.
So there's comments and questions on the plan. We don't limit anyone. So we have never
And I'm
restricted a
talking
person.
about we need all types of housing. Like you were so rude, people were so rude to Miss Martin when she said we need different types of housing. We need different types of housing. We've always had different types of housing in Lower Gwinnett, and we'll continue to do it. We will continue to have different types of housing in Lower Gwinnett. And yes, I don't have a question for the developer right now because you know why? Because they didn't get the planning yet. When they get to the planning, and I might see more of what's going on besides of what we saw, then that's the time that we need to all get involved in the project. So I'll leave it alone till next week, but I'll be back next week.
Thank you, ma'am. Any additional questions or comments? You can come on up. Just need to state your name and address.
Hi, I'm Margaret Harkins. Is that on? I'm Margaret Harkins at 216 Nevin Lane in Lower Gwinnett.
You might have to hold it. I don't know if they can hear you online.
Okay.
There you go.
Is that better?
Yep.
Did you get the name and
Yep.
address? Okay. The last time or the first time that there was a presentation, there was a question about whether or not we had the facilities to handle the units that were being proposed, specifically a fire truck that would reach up to the top level. Has that been mitigated by the fact that one layer's off?
Yes, we have, but our fire marshal or fire chief or fire expert is here, Mr. Al Comley.
All the fire.
He knows all about the fire. Mr. Comley, can you speak to it, sir?
I don't shut this thing off. Yes, I'm the fire marshal in Lower Gwinnett. Right now, we have 100-foot aerials, which are certainly the 60-foot height is not a problem with that. We certainly have the equipment to do it. We've been here a number of times really just to make that statement. So we're comfortable with it.
Okay.
And I think the important thing that goes with that is that it's not just the fire trucks and the fire personnel. It's really, we're looking at a building that is really going to be built to today's life safety standards, fully sprinkled, things like that, that will actually add to that level of safety over what we have in some of the other buildings where we don't have those kind of features.
Thank you. The other thing is, I enjoyed the presentation. I thought it was very succinctly presented by the attorney here. I just wanted to add one thing to it, and that was when she mentioned Gwynedd, she missed 182 townhomes in Gwinnett Hunt, which is another development that they may or may not be aware of because it wasn't mentioned when the others were. And those are townhomes that are homeowner owned, not rentals. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments, or feedback?
There's a woman that's had her hand up online.
Oh, I'm sorry. There is one person that has had her hand up online. Ms. Veneman?
Hi, yeah, can you hear me?
We can hear you. We just
Okay,
need you to
great.
state your name and address, ma'am.
Yeah, my name is Emily Vanneman. I live at 117 Mecklenburg Drive in Georgetown, actually. And I just wanted to make a few comments just based on the presentation and kind of the conversation that we're having here. So just to give you some background about me, I'm 34, and I currently am a renter, and I rent in Georgetown, as I mentioned. And the only reason I can afford to live in Lower Gwinnett is because I live in Georgetown, and because I rent in Georgetown. And it's a beautiful community. It's been, again, I think it's been around since the 60s. And I know I'm not alone in my age range of people who can only afford to rent. I think it's something like the average college educated millennial and Gen Z individual earns, I think, between $68,000 and $72,000 a year. So that's right within that bracket of the pricing of this new construction. So just wanted to say that, and that, it's important that we really promote the idea of welcoming all types of people and, people of all backgrounds to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. You can just come up, state your name and address.
Jim Thomas, Lamplighter Lane, and sorry,
You might have to hold it.
Jim Lamplighter Lane, and we're looking to maybe to change, let's say, slow, thoughtful, careful change, and preserving the character and the advancement of the community. Very important, but it feels like this proposal maybe it feels like a little bit of a threat in that we have to approve a high density, what may be turning out to be a cash machine for Toll and for Josh Shapiro and the governor who's standing by this. So we may need to look at the financial relationships and maybe figure out, and so I'd like more information about that and how we can, what is the minimal amount of density that would be approved by the governor, and the minimal amount of density or numbers on that property that would be approved by the Supreme Court, as they use the Chesterbrook Farms issue, because that property was developed by some friends, the Fox family, and that was and they made quite a bit of money on that, because changing zoning is, you make a lot of money, and so into high density. So we have to be cognizant of that, and what is the least amount of density we can approve in keeping with the governor's mandates of bringing in higher density housing. Thanks. And do you have an answer to that?
I think first we have to realize the governor, while elected governor, is not elected to the Board of Supervisors in Lower Gwinnett. So he can't mandate us to do anything. I think he made recommendations through a housing plan. That housing plan applies to the entire 67 counties within Pennsylvania. It's a recommendation. I don't think it's a mandate. In addition, I would assume that you're asserting that, and I might have heard you incorrectly, that Toll and the governor are getting a benefit?
No, are they, well, Toll is obviously getting a benefit because they're making money off of the deal. And the question is, what's a reasonable amount of density, or what's the least amount of density that would be approved in that area?
So I think the least amount of density is we build nothing.
No, I'm sorry. I mean, if we need to build, because the proposition is multifamily or
Mixed use.
Mixed use. What is the least density that we can have in that area that may be more in keeping with the with the properties that we have in?
So I think that's a tricky question, because like I said, you build nothing. I mean, there's no mandate that anything has to be built. I think this developer brought a proposal previously and now again, and he's bringing this second plan to the board for consideration. Obviously, he's not through the process in any way. This is the second time we've seen it, and I think he's kind of presenting that he got feedback from the community, got feedback from interested stakeholders, and this is what he's revising. Doesn't mean that anything has to transpire. And I think the governor's housing action plan is related to a broader need for the entirety of the state as it relates to housing, but I don't think it directs any explicit type of housing in any explicit type of way. I think if you're thinking about our comprehensive plan, and I know you were here like a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about what residential looks like in Lower Gwinnett and areas in which zoning could be considered changed. And we were talking about the definitions related to that type of zoning. We didn't get to that point, and we still, are working through that internally. However, nothing has to happen anywhere, if that makes sense.
Well, actually, I guess that's what I'm seeking clarification for. I'm sorry. I guess that's what I'm seeking clarification for. It feels like we're being pushed toward a higher density utilization in that area, one that we haven't seen before.
Yeah.
And the question is, what is what would be a reasonable, much lower density use? 300 units or 278 units in that area seems to still be out of character or out of, or very high compared to what we have now.
1000%. I think what the attorney for the applicant did speak to the fact that we don't have a standalone apartment complex in Lower Gwinnett.
I also just want to make sure that we're clear here that, I'm sorry, this isn't our property. Like the township is not able to decide, hey, we would like to have it be townhomes instead. We're faced with a proposal from a developer. So what we have to consider is whether we want to permit this proposal to get started in the process. It doesn't approve anything, but it permits the process to proceed forward, or leave the property as it is now unless and until somebody else comes to us or they come back with something different. But we don't get to pick how many units, like that. We can't pick a different developer. We can't say we don't want Toll Brothers, we want somebody else. It's not our property. So we're in a position where we just have to consider the application before us. And I assume they've done the math on the density. They originally proposed, I think Mr. Markman said 300 some units, and brought it down to the 278. I don't know if that's a math that they have to do, how less dense it could go. We can't make that decision about whether or not they would build. If we said you can only build 100 units, I'm not sure they would follow through with the project. Does that help address your question a little bit?
Yes.
Or am I
thank you.
missing?
And I guess the major concern that I have is that.
You just have to, I'm sorry.
I'm
you have to
sorry.
hold
I
on.
guess the major concern that I have is the number of I think it was 13.5 per square, per mile, per acre, I'm sorry. So that kind of density, if we could, if there are propositions, or is there a way to say, maybe that is still too much, 278 units, and could it be revised lower?
I mean, that's feedback that we can give the developer, but because we don't own the property, because they're asking us with this plan to consider it, like that's part of the conversation that we have to have.
So my suggestion is that we consider lower per acre units in that area. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if the person online was first, but we'll let the person in the room go first, and then we'll get you online. I'm sorry. You just need to state your name and address.
Oh, yeah. Eric Holmquist, 1500 Evans Road. And really just want to just reiterate a point and kind of echo an earlier one with a sort of an exclamation point. You know, I do appreciate that, you know, BET has been thoughtful about, you know, reworking the proposal. Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry, you have to lift it up. They can't hear you.
I do appreciate that the BET is being thoughtful about trying to kind of rework this in a way they think may, you know, sort of fit in. I'm not diametrically opposed to the idea, but with due respect to, you know, their data points, I'm saying this is not necessarily characteristically different than Lower Gwinnett. Again, with respect to your sort of cherry-picked data points, the data point you didn't include was the density factor. That is uniquely different than the rest of Lower Gwinnett. But again, I'm not entirely opposed to it, and I do appreciate there's some effort to try and sort of work something workable. My point is really around just the traffic, which obviously the gentleman talked about earlier. And I know this has been an ongoing discussion. We've talked about this. I guess my question is, when the traffic study was done, was at a point in time. Since that point in time, in some ways, the landscape has in fact changed. We've added in the JJ property. We've added in the Maple Glen development. We're probably going to add in the Penna development for Springhouse Nursery. And I think these are all fine. I think these are all good progress. But again, I think it would be fair to say the landscape has changed since that study was done. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But I do think, given that we've seen material change in what could be pressure on that traffic lane, which is already kind of a problem, I think it's incumbent upon the township to require that an updated traffic study be done with these new characteristics considered, because I think frankly, they really do change the equation. So thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if you want to respond. You can if you want to.
So excellent point that's brought up. Obviously, as time progresses I learned a lot tonight about the history of the township. But one of the things that, as far as the traffic study is concerned, as I mentioned before, the traffic study was done in 2025. A revised traffic study was done in 2026. That was based on data that was collected recently with respect to both of those traffic studies.
When in 26?
February of 2026.
Okay.
So when we do a traffic study, one of the things that we need to do is we need to project out into the future. We need to take into account any other developments that may be known or may be coming in the area, which may have an effect on the study area roadways. So we looked at Maple Glen. We looked at some of the other developments out in Upper Dublin that may make its way out to Lower Gwinnett Township. We also took into account the Springhouse Innovation Park, and they had a plan as recent as 2019, 2020. It was a significant development. We included that in a traffic study. We looked at it with and without the traffic associated with the development at the request of the township traffic engineer, just to see what it would look like in the event that that development did occur. We're also aware of just general growth in the area that is associated with developments that we don't know about, that may be just coming through the township and just general growth in traffic. All of those things are included in the traffic study so that we look out into the future. We're trying to do our best to project the amount of traffic that will be on the roadway. I mentioned before that we have been looking at this corridor for at least 7 years at this point. And the benefit of that is the fact that I have historical data along Norristown Road to look at what actually has happened along Norristown Road from the 5 Points intersection to Tennis Avenue. What I think is important, and to the point of the changing landscape, there have been a number of developments that have occurred in this area. There have been a number of changes that have occurred to the landscape. If you compare the traffic counts that were collected in 2019 to the traffic counts that were collected in 2024 and 2025, there is a negligible difference in the amount of traffic on Norristown Road. That may be hard to believe, and I'd be more than happy to provide the data. But if you compare the traffic volumes for those 5, 6 years, it's a minimal difference in the amount of traffic that was on the road present in 2019 to traffic's on the road present 2024 and 2025. As far as the Johnson and Johnson property is concerned, I am aware of that project. It was recently announced. Johnson & Johnson will be required to prepare their own traffic study, look at the roadway network that they're going to affect. It will need to take this development into account if it's fortunate enough to move forward. They will have to do the same analyses that we're doing. They will have to mitigate the impact of their development. If they need to do roadway improvements and as such, then they will be required to do so, just like we are. So as developments come in, they look at the roadway, they try to predict the future, then they need to make sure to comply with the ordinances and PennDOT's requirements that we mitigate the impacts. They'll be required to do the same thing.
Can you, I heard a bunch of shrugging while you said that the traffic hasn't changed. I don't do traffic studies for a living. Can you explain in layman's terms why we feel like there's so many more cars on the road, but it's not showing up in the data?
And also, I guess I wanted to just, while you explain that, can you weave in how the pandemic and the differing ways that individuals are working and that transition that falls within those 6 years? So maybe that's potentially why you're saying it's negligible?
It's a great point. So I am saying it's negligible because it's based on the actual data. And what I mean by that is that it's part of a traffic study. When you initiate a traffic study, the first thing you do is identify the area of influence, the area that you're going to have an effect on from a traffic perspective. You don't go, for a development like this, you don't go miles in each direction because as you go further away from the development, the traffic starts to disperse. But with respect to the traffic studies, we go out and we count traffic at the existing intersections, how it exists today. We typically, for residential or mixed-use development, we'll look at peak hours of traffic. And the peak hours are defined as the one highest hour of traffic in the morning on a typical Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday. And that's, we record traffic from about 6:30 in the morning to about 9:30 in the morning. So about 3 hours. And then we pick the one highest hour of those 3 hours. Similarly, for the PM peak hour for the afternoon, we look at typically 3:30 to 6:30. And again, we pick the one highest hour of traffic in that 3-hour time period. We then utilize those traffic volumes during those peak periods to determine the impact a development may have on the roadway. With the theory that if you can make the peak hours of traffic work, the highest hours of traffic work, then the off-peak hours should work as well. So we look at those peak hours and determine what improvements or what mitigation measures we must take to make sure that we mitigate the impact of the proposed development. And again, it's not just me saying it. As Mr. Dixon had mentioned before, the township traffic engineer has reviewed the study, will continue to review the study if we're able to move forward through the process. PennDOT's involved because we're on a state roadway, so they'll also be reviewing it. They're going to have comments. They're going to require me to make changes throughout the process, as will Mr. Dixon. But the traffic volumes, when you look at 2019 peak hours and the 2024 and 2025 peak hours, there's a minimal difference in traffic volumes along Norristown Road, right at the 309 interchange. Some of
Oh,
that,
at the 309 interchange.
yeah, Norristown Road right along the corridor, let's say from Tennis to McKean.
Wow.
Through that area.
When you say minimal, can we quantify that? Just for me as a person.
Less than 5%.
Less than 5%. Okay.
But the point that you made earlier about the changes, and one of the main reasons maybe behind that minimal change is the fact that there have been changes with respect to how people work and how people commute due to COVID. That's why you have office buildings that are vacant, because people are now working from home. So there's been a lot of changes that occurred, and all I can say is the data itself bears out the fact that there's very minimal changes that have occurred through that area.
There may be minimal changes that have occurred, but I believe the question was due to the changing landscape with J&J, with Maple Glen, does your traffic study address those change, does your February 2026 traffic study, will it address the changes in the landscape? Meaning, is it going to be, do those changes would change the result is, I guess, the question.
Just to add on to what Mr. Chong is saying, like, can you predict? We understand that the Johnson & Johnson announcement came very late in February, and we understand that, you might not know fully what it's going to look like at the Goodman track or, the Maple Glen changes. But did you prepare? And I think does your traffic study reflect what the future needs could potentially be?
Our traffic study takes into account every development that was mentioned, but for the Johnson & Johnson.
But for the Johnson, okay.
Correct. And on top of that, as I mentioned, it includes a full, if you recall, there was a pretty robust redevelopment plan proposed for the Springhouse Innovation Park.
Sure, yeah.
That's included in the traffic study.
Okay.
Even though there's no plans in front of the township at this point, we just know something may happen there. So it includes the Goodman tract. It includes that tract that I showed on that one slide, which is on the east side of Welsh Road. It includes.
Just the question is, does the J&J addition to the township, does that impact your traffic study at all?
The J&J addition will have an absolute impact on the roadway network through that area. With that said, though, with all due respect, that's not my responsibility to fix. That's Johnson & Johnson's responsibility to fix.
We understand.
What I'm tasked with doing is looking out into the future.
Yeah.
Addressing what I can address. On top of that, I'm adding a general growth to the traffic network.
Yeah.
That general growth that I've added is not going to account for the potential J&J development.
And we understand when J&J is going to go through their process, they will come before us and they'll do their own traffic study.
And they will include our development again.
Yes,
If we're
and
at a point we're moving
yep.
forward, and as you come in, as developers come in, they build upon,
Mhm.
right? And look at what they need to do to make it happen. We're aware of it. It's going to have an impact. To what extent, I don't know yet, but we've accounted for everything that we know of up to the point the traffic study was done. And based on the improvements that we're proposing and based on the coordination and the comments we've received so far, we feel confident that we can mitigate the impact of the development and provide for a positive effect, not only from a vehicular traffic perspective, but also a pedestrian traffic perspective.
If you want to ask a question, I'm sorry, you just have to come up. You just have to come up, state your name. Oh, he'll be available. He's not going anywhere.
He's not going anywhere. I'm Carolyn Pearson. I live on Tennis. In your traffic studies, when you refer to volume, I assume you're referring to number of cars. What about noise volume? Which is a continuing problem, both from 309 and from increased traffic. So I wondered if any of these traffic studies included sound.
Traffic studies do not include any analysis of sound. The township has an ordinance with respect to sound levels. We intend to comply with that ordinance requirement. We understand that there's higher levels of noise due to the Route 309 being in close proximity and a high volume of traffic, but that is not something that is taken into account in a traffic study.
Thank
Do you
you.
want to get to the
Quick follow-up.
This is-
This is
I'm
really
sorry,
quick.
I'm sorry. We told Mrs. Adrian 3 people ago. Miss Ames.
It's same
Oh,
topic.
is it have to do with this?
It's just a follow-on thought on
Okay.
what we're talking about. So being
Okay.
very fast. Number one is the traffic studies. I'll let you guys arm wrestle whether you have to update it. That's between you guys. But is that a public document, or if we wanted to see that, would we have to do a public records request to see those traffic studies?
I don't think it's available yet on our site.
It's on our website
Oh, it
right
is
now.
now?
Right now, it's part of the packet for this meeting. So
Yeah.
if you go on our website to the Board of Supervisors,
Okay.
you'll see there's 2 lines, and it's because the plan is on. It's one line, and then the traffic
So
study.
when it is
just too
updated,
big.
that will be public. And the second thing, you remind me, at the open house recently, you guys provided some estimates of incremental traffic on different roads. Those were nominal values, like 13.4 cars. But that's out of context. And in subsequent reporting, it'd be helpful to see what that represents as a percentage increase of traffic, because otherwise we don't know what to do with that number. It's all relative to what the existing traffic level is. It'd just be helpful to have some context as to what that represents. Thank you.
Thank you. Miss Ames,
Hi, can everyone hear me okay?
we can.
Oh, wonderful. Adrian Ames, 1448 West Lamplighter Lane in Lower Gwinnett. And I wanted to thank everyone so far for chiming in, bringing different perspectives. I think it's wonderful to hear the history of Lower Gwinnett was really awesome. I love that kind of stuff. I'm a history geek. And hearing from the resident of Georgetown was lovely. I am one to understand that change is inevitable, but I do ask for us to keep in mind that this project can't be looked at in a vacuum. Springhouse Nursery, we know, is something that's being worked on, the J&J coming to light, but also my concerns that have been voiced before by other residents about trying to keep Berkadia as a tenant of that corporate building and how they're threatening to leave if something doesn't get done with the other vacant building. My concern, on top of other projects that are going on with all the development happening very quickly, is once we potentially change the zoning to mixed use, BET would have, I'm assuming, maybe I'm wrong, ownership over that other building. Maybe I'm wrong. And if Berkadia were to leave, could BET then turn that also into mixed retail and apartment space in a future board, whether that's 10 years from now, I don't know. So once you ring that bell in terms of changing the zoning, what potentially could continue to happen on that parcel of land in terms of development if Berkadia leaves, or another tenant that would no longer use that corporate building leaves? What happens then? Another just concern about thinking ahead. We also have what's going on in Maple Glen with development there. Although I literally live on the opposite side of the township, and this potentially would not impact me on my daily life with traffic for this particular development. I am concerned because, as the other wonderful speaker talked about the history of Lower Gwinnett, if we do things too quickly and we're not calculated, and the change is something that we just can't control happening so fast, then once we have all that happen, we are going to be all sad and thinking about not only the traffic noise going down Penland Pike, but just about anywhere. So I just ask, if we can think about what's going on with that other building as well as other developments in the township so that we can think about what's the best change for everyone. So it's Lower Gwinnett. So what? We're slower Gwinnett compared to Upper Gwinnett, right?
I like that.
We're
Okay.
slower Gwinnett. But I think that's what makes Lower Gwinnett as beautiful as everyone says it is. That's why we're beautiful, right? That we can continue to make the change, but do it in our own way. And I understand that there's mandates being suggested, quote unquote, by the governor or the Montgomery County future plan. I think it's called. If I'm wrong, I apologize. But we can, if you're saying we can do things our own way, I feel like why not put your own Lower Gwinnett stamp on it and be proud of where we live and do it in the right way. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. I just, Adrian, while you're, yeah, that was very, very well said, Adrian. Thank you. I just want to say that with respect to the other building, another zoning change would have to happen if they wanted to change that from its current commercial use that Berkadia is operating in. So even if this project moved forward, it doesn't mean if Berkadia leaves, they can then build more residential housing, correct?
Yeah.
But we could also ask Mr. Markman, I guess, to give us any information around his intentions. You have to use the.
So essentially right now, the residential zoning that we're asking for is 13 and a half units to the acre. What we're proposing is about 12 units to the acre. So I guess conceptually, maybe there could be another, unit and a half to the acre, which is probably 37 more units possibly on the site somewhere. 37 living units. So it's slightly less than the density we're asking for, what we're proposing in the apartment building. So that's a possibility. I mean, the truth is that we want the mixed use. We want, different types of uses on the same site work for each other. Because what happens is, people that work at Berkadia will live in the apartments, they'll shop in the stores. People that live in the apartments will go work at Berkadia, shop in the stores. So it all works together. And so we are a mixed use developer. And if you look like majority of what we do in the suburbs, the majority is mixed use type properties. And we propose to mix the uses together so people don't have to leave the site. So.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that clarification because I didn't do the math. I thought that was it. So that's good to know.
I'm going to switch to somebody in person and then I'll come back to the other person with their hand raised online. You can just come on and just state your name and address.
Sure. My name is Hope Helfeld. I live at 1165 Stonehouse Road. So my concerns are we're changing zoning. Sure. My concerns are we're changing zoning and so many properties in such a small time zone that we're really changing what our town looks like. So people moved to Lower Gwinnett for the open space. It's the town of trails. We wanted in our community to put more lights in, and we were told no because they want Lower Gwinnett to look like farmland. So now, 10 years later, we couldn't add lights in our community, but now we're having these high density multi-unit land use, changing zoning again. And once we do it once, it's going to happen again and again and again. So those are the concerns that I have with zoning changes so quickly over the last 2 years. Spring House Innovation is still not fully full, so we're not even seeing the impact of the cars coming in and out of that. And honestly, do we know the vacancy rate there? It's got to
You
be
said that, I couldn't hear what you said. You,
Spring House Innovation.
Innovation Park?
Yeah.
How many buildings are vacant? Is that what you said?
Well, yeah, the percentage of.
I don't,
yes.
I don't.
I mean, that's, well, I walk there every day, so it's probably 40%. I mean, there's big areas that are not being used. We also have so much vacancy on Bethlehem Pike. Would like to see that developed. As far as the traffic, traffic hasn't changed for per hour that you were talking about because people are going to work later or they're going to work early. We're more flexible in when we have to be at work. We're not have to be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning anymore. Some people could go in at 9:30. Some people go in at 7:30. So there is a lot of traffic. It's just more spread out. So I think we need to keep that in mind also. And I think that's all I needed to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm going to just switch to the person online. Okay, okay, all right, we're budging them, but it's okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Just say
Hi.
your name and
Sure.
address.
Can you hear me? Okay. Again, Lisa Washaba, and I'm from Trewellen Estates. And my thought on the traffic, when you mentioned it and everybody said, wow, it seems like it's more traffic. I think one of the observations for me is that when traffic, you also have to consider that when you're getting out of the township and you're hitting a traffic light, like say like near William Penn Inn, I will take, instead of taking Norristown, I will take your Penland Road to avoid that waiting in the traffic all the way back to Folkways. So I know that people are taking alternate routes that you're not measuring, and we're doing that because we don't want to be waiting in that traffic. So I think you're missing some of the traffic. We're like ants. We're going to go another way. We'll go whichever way. And the same thing for going toward like Montgomeryville. When you come out of our area, then all of a sudden you are jammed into traffic. So it does feel like there's more, and I think there is more. It's just the way we're measuring it on the major roads. We're missing how people are kind of going on some of the smaller roads like your Penland Pike. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Pagano, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
You can just state your name and address.
Kathy Begano, 411 Brookside Avenue, right across from Ambler Yards, which was brought up this evening in the PowerPoint. Just to touch on that, just 2 quick points. We have worked with the developer in Ambler Yards and have gone through the very similar process. And I will substantiate when the board says that they do take their time, because that has been a process and many, many, many conversations. So I appreciate that BET is made adjustments because Ambler Yards made adjustments as well. But the architecture of it looks great. I think this is something that young professionals would really appreciate living in Lower Gwynedd. This is a great place to live. I've lived here for over 10 years. The data that was put into the PowerPoint, which I really appreciate about the income and age bracket. I am almost 50 years old and I am a 6-figure young professional. And the rent that they're proposing is actually more than my mortgage. I don't think that I could even afford that rent. So for the person who, the attorney who mentioned the comments that were made in the very beginning, I was really disappointed to hear that one resident was afraid of welfare people moving in. That is not welfare rent. And it's very disappointing to hear something like that in a community that I love to live in, but I'm actually not surprised because I've had comments made towards me. So those are the 2 comments that I wanted to make, but I feel like this is a great place to live and it would be nice because I do have friends that would love to live in the area if there was more housing that they could be in a great community such as Lower Gwynedd. And frankly, that's why I ran for local government. So thank you for the time. Have a great night.
Thank you, ma'am. Sir, if you're ready, you can come on up. Just state, I think if you pull it out and state your name and address, everyone will be able to hear you.
Sure. Can you hear me?
I can.
It's Fred Wentz, 904 Gypsy Hill Road. I haven't lived in Lower Gwinnett as long as Miss Jones, but I've been here 60 years. And we can't stop the development. Oh, I understand that, but we can slow it down. And this guy's right. You guys can specify, or you can say, hey, you can't build, why not 100 units an acre or whatever? You can say 6. Look at, we have a precedent for that. You have the Georgetown. I think they're 6 or 8 units per acre. You can tell them that's what we want. And if you look at their renderings, it's I think one of the things we all like about Lower Gwinnett is that it's largely green. And there's not a lot of green in that picture after they show, 75-foot setback. Everybody has 75-foot setback, or nearly everyone in Lower Gwinnett. That's not a big deal. I think we'd like to see more green. Development is good, but not at any cost. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
Ed McBurney, 1205 Kingsley Court. I live right behind the township building here. One of the questions that I have is related to the traffic study that was done. And did it include Bethlehem Pike at all? And the reason why I ask is that, to your point, Janine, it seems like there's more traffic because there is. Coming out on Chesterfield, trying to make a left-hand turn going south on Bethlehem Pike is impossible when the traffic is backed up past Chesterfield. And that has happened 6 or 7 times to me in the last couple of months. So my question is, the study has to take into account the entire township when we're looking at traffic. Has that been looked at? Because clearly when you look at all the developments around here, J&J, I think it is the responsibility of everybody to take it into account because there is no plan to deal with it. That's my first question.
You talking about coming out at Cedar Hill or just coming out right out here? Just
Right,
coming out
right, yeah,
here?
right on Chesterfield. Try to make a left. So the traffic backs up
Mhm.
on Bethlehem Pike past our development, the Wyndham Woods.
Yeah.
And I think, some of that has to do too with how many people are going into Starbucks and Whole Foods, because when they're coming out by the light and people are alternating, letting them in, then you can't go past the light where you'd make the right to go into the giant shopping
Yeah.
center. So clearly we've got a traffic issue. And I think that that's the overall concern about what high density housing is, or mixed use housing is going to cause in a township. We don't have the infrastructure to deal with it. We don't have the roads to deal with it. I didn't hear about any plans to expand. I think the study, as I understood it, went to McKean. But it's a bigger issue. And so that's my question. Is the study take into account anything that's happening on Bethlehem Pike as a result of more cars coming in? Because clearly the people that are going to live in a development are going to like Starbucks, they're going to like Whole Foods, they're going to like Arpeggios, and they're going to come down and they're going to add to the traffic. So,
I think he did answer, and I don't want to speak for you, but was Bethlehem Pike included in any aspect? I think the answer is no.
Yes.
Oh, yes?
Yeah, the new.
Oh, the new one did, not the
new one
original
was
one.
factored in, but.
So the traffic study that was done in 2025 included the 5 Points intersection.
Yeah.
So the area that was included was the 5 Points intersections, Tennis Avenue. So all the intersections, the main intersections in there, the 309 ramps, the Route 309 ramps, Tennis Avenue, Bavary Drive, McKean
Hold on one
Road.
second. The 5 Points is what they call Spring House, where Spring House Tavern is, and where Veterans Park is, and where Bethlehem
Whole
Pike,
Foods, the Whole
Norristown, like that's the 5 Points.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I apologize. Yes,
No worries.
the
Go ahead.
Bethlehem Pike, Norristown Road intersection.
Yep.
I refer to as the 5 Points. That intersection was included in the traffic study was done in 2025, as well as the traffic study done in 2026.
Okay.
When I was talking about the change in traffic volumes, I was had only focused really in the area surrounding the 309 interchange, kind of get a sense of what we were looking at in terms of increase in traffic. And I was really looking at more so the area where the development is proposed to see how the traffic volumes have changed there. I'm aware of, obviously, the traffic volumes at the Five Points intersection. That's been studied not only as part of this development, but also as part of that SHIP project that I'd mentioned. So we've looked at that intersection, and as I mentioned earlier, the township has done some significant improvements to that intersection. Inclusive of that, there is, from a traffic signal perspective, there's what they call a traffic adaptive system that works within 10 intersections, starting at 202 at Norristown or Sunnytown Pike and all the way down to Tennis Avenue, that adapts to traffic volume. So it changes traffic signal timings as it adapts to volume. So all that's been incorporated. So to answer the question,
Yes.
it has been included.
Thank you, sir. I think you have another question?
So what's the solution then to the problem? What's the solution? It's still, so you're saying it's there, it's been studied, and it is a problem. What is the solution?
So as I mentioned before, there are certain requirements that are put forth to us from a traffic perspective when we move forward through a land development process, not only from a township perspective, but also from a PennDOT perspective. We're required to mitigate the impact of our development and hopefully improve how the traffic operates today. So my job, if we're able to move forward, will be to work with the township and work with PennDOT to come up with any potential improvements that can be done in the area to mitigate my development and hopefully improve some of the current situation. Again, this is going to sound rough. The reality of the situation is I'm not responsible for fixing today's problems, but what I'm going to try to do is to address some of the concerns that are raised today, or some of the concerns that exist on the roadway network, and hopefully improve them. But that's not my responsibility. It's not our responsibility to do that, but we will endeavor to try to improve the operation. We'll work in concert with the township to see if there are any adjustments that can be made. But there's been a pretty significant amount of improvements that were recently done at that intersection. So there's not too much more that can be done specifically at that intersection. It's just a matter of how it's dealt with from a traffic signal perspective.
Chad, do you want to add anything to that? You don't want to? Okay. We're making a note of that, Chad.
So I would also like to know if we're going to be made aware of, when the traffic study was done, what were the modalities and things that were used to make those determinations. And I am not being accusatory at all with what I'm going to say next. However, we know that BET Investments paid for the study. If I'm paying for a study, I want a study to come out that's going to be favorable to me. Now, I'm not accusing you. And well, no, I'm just saying that there is a conflict. There is a conflict of interest here that needs to be vetted out.
No, and sir, I think that that's inherently important to talk about. We want them to do the study first, and it's the requirement that they bring a study to us and that they pay for it. But then our township engineer, traffic engineer, who we have to pay, is going to pour over it and tell them you missed this, you didn't do this. We make these recommendations of how you can mitigate it. There is stuff that you can do, and he'll come back with corrections, revisions, and requests. While he's doing that, the county will do it, and then PennDOT, because it's a state road, PennDOT's going to weigh in. So they're not doing it in isolation, but the onus is on the developer to come forward and to pay for it and to bring it to us. And then we'll tell you how incorrect you are.
I look forward to that. Now, my next question
But it is online, so if you want to see it and read the modalities and read the criteria and the traffic study, in our board packet, it's linked. So I think it's going to be the second link.
I got that. Thank you. The other question I have is more of a question for the Board of Supervisors. And the question really resides around kind of my thought that we're putting the cart before the horse. My question to the board is, why hasn't the board developed a plan that takes all of these things into account? I'm very serious.
So we had a meeting till 11:45 2 weeks ago about the comprehensive plan. It's online. It's online. I'm not exaggerating. We took a 3-year process to update our comprehensive plan. Our comprehensive plan had not been updated since the year 2000. It's now 2026. We embarked upon this in 2023. As part of that process, we met monthly with an advisory board. We had 2 open houses. We had community surveys. We begged people to listen and to tell us, what do you want? What do you want? And people did respond. We had over 500 responses to our survey. As part of that, We worked with the Montgomery County Planning Commission. We wanted to identify within our municipality what made sense for a plan until 2045. So what areas could actually handle any kind of density? What areas need to be, don't touch this at all, it needs to stay the same? What areas could benefit from development? And we had recommendations from the group, from everybody. And that plan is also online. We met, I think we didn't get past this subject until after 9:45. It might even have been later than that. We talked for over 3 hours. And part of what I think people were concerned with was the mere idea of what the word high density means. Because we don't define it in the plan. We define it in our zoning ordinance. And I think what we talked about is if we don't have this plan initiated, this is what we're faced with. We're kind of we're playing defense. A developer will come to us and say, listen, I own this piece of property. This is what I want to do. And they can't do it by right. So then they have to ask us, hey, I want to build 5,000 units. What do you think?
So maybe my question was worded poorly, but why haven't we defined low density, medium density, and high density with actual numbers? And from my perspective, low density is anything under 25 units, medium is under 50, and high density is above 50 with maxing out at 75. So why haven't we considered something like that? And then we don't have to deal with these things. Builders will be able to come in and understand what they can and can't do.
And so
That's probably my question.
That's the next step of the comprehensive plan. You're the first person who wanted to come up here and say numbers. So I appreciate you doing that.
Good. Does that mean we're going to do it?
No, I think, Mr. McMurdy, I think we want you on our comprehensive plan committee, but also I think really, that's part of what the conversation is. So we passed the comprehensive plan and if the meeting's extended to June 23rd, hopefully you can come back then. In the interim, we have to talk about what those things would look like and how we define it. And then once we get to that point and the plan's good to go, then we go to the zoning ordinance and then we start to make those changes in the zoning ordinance. That's where the meat of it is. That's where we sit down and we say, what does this look like in Lower Gwinnett? What does these definitions mean for us and how do we want to define it? We put it in our zoning ordinance and then developers know. Then they know.
That's good. I hope my recommendation is taken. The last thing I want to comment on is somebody did ask the question about how much money or something like that a development like this could make. So I Googled it. And for 278 mixed housing units with mixed housing development, the Google thing said that would probably generate somewhere between 30 and 40 million plus in profit to the developer. So I asked the question, who's really benefiting from this? The developer or Lower Gwinnett with potential high density housing, the impact on traffic, the problems on Bethlehem Pike and Norristown Road? I'll leave that question to further debate.
You did Google, you didn't do ChatGPT?
Actually, ChatGPT came up and I clicked on that, so it's ChatGPT.
Oh, it was ChatGPT. Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Brooks Bircher. I live 909 North Surrey Drive. I have no comments on number of units, number of cars, or number of people. I guess my thought process is that the builders will build what you allow them to build. And it seems the ultimate question is not how many floors or how many cars, it's what the law allows. We've heard here tonight, there's some confusion about zoning and this section and that section. And so I would ask the board, when they make a decision, that I would hope it's not, the board has approved this subdivision. I would hope you explain to the township why you approved it. There's a lot of issues that you've heard tonight about people, cost, benefit, traffic, access, security, safety, and it all requires zoning changes. And my concern is that from experience that zoning changes can be a slippery slope. That the next person comes along and says, well, you've done it here. We want to build a gun range on the next property. Why can't we do that? It's zoned so-and-so. So I would hope you'd have a good reason for why you approve it, to take into consideration your long-range plan, the effects of the builder, the effects of the community, and the impact that your decisions not only affect this builder, but those of us who will live here for years and years to come, and those who are not yet here, who also want to move here. So that's it.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Mark Schaefer, from 23 Brookline Court in the Gwin Development. And I appreciate all the different comments that are made tonight. And I want to say, I really appreciate the the presentation we received. I was at the last presentation. I think you've really done your homework. I think it was a well presented presentation. The lawyer did a great job. And for a developer to willingly give up, what is it, a quarter of the units because of public feedback, I think that's pretty impressive, personally. I mean, they priced this out. Remember, everybody's trying to make money, whether a businessman, small businessman, or IBM or J&J. J&J is not dropping $1 billion in Lower Gwinnett for the fun of it. They're doing it because they're going to make a lot of money from that development. And this is a developer who's willing to come in and do that. They take their money. That's the American way, right? And if the township were to say, you can only put in 50 units, the developer's going to say, that's not economically feasible. All right, it's just not going to work. Some of the other comments, so that's the positive. You know, you talk about traffic, living in Gwin Air, trying to make a left-hand turn on Sunnytown Pike out of my development, I can wait for 5 minutes for the traffic to clear. Now, let's think, how much traffic does Gwin Air and Gwinnett Hunt put into our community? Is it a lot? Is it a lot? That's how many units they're putting in. Let's put it in that perspective. That's about the same number of units as my development, but nobody's complaining, well, Gwin Air and Gwinnett Hunt are causing all that traffic on Sunnytown Pike. Let's kind of put things into perspective here. I really appreciate Carol's presentation. It's been a privilege to know you for what, 30 years now? The 30 years I've been in the community. And yes, Lower Gwinnett's been subject to change, and it's been resistant to change for all that time. She mentioned the trolley line that used to go down, it went right down Sunnytown Pike, made a turn and went down to Chestnut Hill. I found a newspaper article from 1912 where the community was up in arms. They're going to put a trolley line in, and the vagrants are going to come in because it's only 3 cents to ride the trolley. And Lower Gwin will be flooded with vagrants who can ride the trolley and disturb our Sunday schools. So this is not a new situation. With regard to things like noise, I'm an acoustical engineer. The noise you're hearing is mostly from the highway noise on 309. Low-speed traffic is much less of an impact, and the cars pulling in and pulling out will be, compared to 309, will be a lot smaller. And again, talking about change, 20 years ago, if you said, I want to put up a cell phone tower, people were screaming, don't put up a cell phone tower. 2 years ago, people are screaming, please put up a cell phone tower. We need more coverage in Lower Gwinnett. So we have to adapt. We have to be willing to look at these things. And finally, from an environmental perspective, I was chair of the Lower Gwinnett EAC for 6 years, member for 9. If there's going to be development, this is where you do it. We've already got the infrastructure, right? The sewers are in, the electric's in, the plumbing is in. It's already isolated. All the asphalt's already there. We're not paving over any green space. They're putting green space in. So if there's going to be development, this is kind of like the ideal place. You got a highway on one side, a golf course on the other side, retirement community on the other side, and a street. If you're going to put this many houses somewhere, Gwin Air, they tore up a farm to do it. All right? Not the way to do things. And there was one more point, which, we love Lower Gwinnett. Yes. Why did we move here? I think this generation, who's going to buy your house? Think about that. You are not going to be replaced by somebody your age. You're going to be replaced by somebody younger. And what do they think about? Schools. The school district is one of the #1 reasons. We've got one of the top 10 school districts in the state. That's why people come to Lower Gwinnett. It's pretty, yes. They come here for the schools and the transportation opportunities. We've got a train station, we've got 309, we've got great schools. And yes, we've got green space and parks and trails. This will not affect any of that. Again, the contribution of traffic is about the same as my development, and nobody's screaming at my development that we've got too many cars coming and going. So. But so, oh, I agree, but it's because of, well, when they put J&J across the street from my community with 4,000 employees and on, yeah, but, okay.
I'm sorry,
okay.
they can't,
But
they can't hear you online. If you
Yeah.
want to, you can come up.
my point is, yes, I hate the traffic on Town Pike. It has gone up in the last 4 years. And I don't like it either, but
Ma'am,
I'm,
if you
no,
could just
my,
let him
my
finish his
point
comment.
was, if you consider the contribution of Gwin Air to that traffic, it's minimal. That's my point. To put this in perspective, it's how much traffic they're going to generate. It's like the traffic generated by the Gwin Air, Gwinnett Hunt community as a block. On top of it, but it's a delta. It's all the people coming down Town from elsewhere. Anyway, thank you very
sir.
much.
Thank you.
I'm Nancy Hager from Torrellan Estates, and I think that my comment is very similar to the previous person. Are we saying that there's no environmental impact related to the project? I really appreciate the fact that the trees in front of the development will be safe. That's fantastic. And I appreciate the fact that we're going to have a pollinator garden. That sounds really nice. But I would like BET to confirm whether an environmental impact assessment has been done and more information on that topic, because the whole night we've been talking about traffic, but how about the environment? And, our area has a lot of wildlife. That's why we love, where we live. So let's talk more about that topic if that's possible.
Thank you, ma'am. Do you want to comment on any plans to do an environmental impact study? No? Okay, thank you.
I had a follow-up question about that. Does the plan account for common open space? No, I'm looking at Kristen. I mean, unless your traffic, I don't think your traffic study would. Okay.
Any additional questions, comments? You can come on up.
My name's Keith Beal, and I live in 301 Norristown in Gwinnett Estates. And I'm not speaking for Gwinnett Estates, I'm speaking for myself. I'm in favor of the project. I think that they have done a good job in reducing the number of units. I think that I worry about if they don't build and Berkadia moves out, then what's going to happen? And also, if they're not building, what's going to come next? It could be something that's much less desirable. These are very nice apartments, very nice facilities and some small stores. And I just want to state that I have no objection to it.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? You can come on up. Oh, somebody's online? Miss Ames, do you have something else to comment, or did you just keep your hand up?
Hi, everyone. I actually did have another question.
Okay.
I did learn how to use the raise hand feature on my Uptick since 2 weeks ago, so I'm so proud of myself. My question is, I'm looking right now at Google Maps, and I apologize if this was already mentioned. In terms of what's currently at the corporate intersection of Beach Hollow Road and Norristown Road, and is it Bowberry Drive? That's the name of the corporate, I guess, entrance currently. Is there going to be a new traffic setup there with traffic lights? Did I miss that part of the presentation? And if so, what is the impact going to be on the Beach Hollow development?
A traffic signal currently exists at Bavary Drive. We're not proposing to change that. We're going to maintain that traffic signal, but we're going to look at possible retiming revisions that may help the residents of Beach Hollow based on previous conversations raised or previous conversations held with those residents during previous open houses.
Okay, thank you. I guess my concern was for those direct residents, because I know there's been some people commenting with regards to their traffic concerns. I just wanted to make sure that if this project were to proceed, you consider the immediate impacts of those residents close by. I could have sworn there was a resident that spoke previously, and I don't know if they've spoken currently or recently. But I personally, again, being across the township, worry about the traffic implications for the immediate residents as well as the ripple effect that's going to take place not only through Lower Gwynedd, but also through Upper Dublin. And if we can just pause as well and look at Plymouth Meeting, and I know I've shared before that I teach in Colonial, the township of Plymouth has seen incredible amounts of development. And we talk about how, yes, change is inevitable. But if you want to see firsthand what it's like to drive around and be like, wow, there's so much traffic. Wow, they're building there. I mean, that is what could occur if we don't stop and think about very calculated, how can we slow things down? How can we do this right? And that is my concern as a resident is I do not want Lower Gwynedd turning into Plymouth Township. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I think it says Al Hubs, Mr. or Mrs. Hubs. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing it wrong. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry about that. Al Hubs, 1436 West Lamplighter Lane. For those who are still in the audience and heard earlier, I did go to Spring House, so you know I've been here a while, back when it was K through 3. But anyway, one of my questions or concerns, I guess, here is everyone's talking about traffic, which I duly, truly appreciate, having been here 60 years. I will say this, no one seems to be talking about light pollution and or other types of pollution for just general development. Having seen the fields go away, having seen all the open space disappearing rapidly, it seems like we're in a position where, since it's not truly mandated, we can simply just say no, or we can come back with a less dense proposal, which they've already done once. Maybe it's a matter of getting down just to 3 floors instead of 4 stories, and maybe that solves a lot of the problems for folks. I'm not saying that it does or it doesn't. In terms of the acoustical engineer, as we all know, when some of these big trees disappear, we know what happens. Take a look at what happened to 202 up by the backside of Gwynedd Knoll. People who live along that now have to deal with the nonsense and all the noise that that generated. So I think when you start taking away shrubs, brush, trees, all the rest of it, um, it just doesn't have a positive effect on the overall pollution sources for anybody here. I'm not saying that we should not consider such things. I think Adrian's last point there was well taken. I think you need to proceed cautiously, because these are the types of slopes that they become very slippery very quickly. And once it's done, we all know what's going to happen there. Then the next one will be, yep, you did it here, we got to do it again. But I think getting the density down a bit more probably goes a long way to solving that problem or a lot of people's concerns. It addresses traffic controls issues, it addresses the overall height of the building, the appearance of the building. And based on the photos that you're seeing, it looks like if you ever go out and look at the skies at night these days, they're pretty bright. They're not as dark as they used to be. So I guess that's the bulk of my discussion, but I just think that we're in a position where you don't necessarily have to do anything. And I'm not necessarily saying that we should or shouldn't, but I do think we need to proceed with caution. That's it.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
I think it's Ann B. Can you hear me?
Yes, but it's not Ann B. It's Paul Bourdieu.
Oh.
But Ann is here.
What was your last, what was your last name, sir?
Bourdieu, Beaulieu. and I'm 1426 Vestra Road.
Thank
And I basically have, I guess, 3 comments. One is, I agree with a couple of the other people that say, when you're changing the zoning, you got to look at the big picture. So if you go for multi-use for this plot, down the road sometimes, maybe the tech center that's west of them might be coming back and saying, hey, we'd like to have multi-use also. So you just need to, keep that in mind. But then I had 2 comments about traffic, one of which you probably can't do, but it would be good to improve things. The access road for this new development, if it could be moved to line up with the other road across the street, that would make a really big improvement on that intersection area. I don't know if it can be done, but that would be great. The other thing that I noticed is in their new plan, I really like the new design. I have to say, I'll say that good part about it. I do like the new design, and I like the apartment look. That's really nice, guys. But the other thing I noticed about traffic is the westbound lane on Town. They want to shrink the 2 lanes down to 1 lane and do that further towards Route 309. So now they're shrinking the 2 down to 1 in order to provide the eastbound direction to have a longer left lane stacking. And that's a good idea too, but I think it's a bad idea to get rid of the 2 lanes. Instead, you should just make the road bigger. I mean, we should be looking to increasing the 2 lanes on Town, not getting rid of them on Norristown. Well, yeah, they keep changing that's another thing. Anyways, I think they should not shrink that 2 lanes. And to go back to moving the changing the intersection, moving it down, that would also give a little bit more room between the 309 off ramp when you're going north on 309 and you come off the off ramp for Town, Norristown, and you take that right. People are going to want to go into that new development. They'll be taking the right and they'll have to scoot across 2 lanes to get into the stacking lane to take the left at the light. So moving that intersection, if it was able to be done a little bit further east to line up with the other road, would give a little bit more room for that. So those are my comments.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Any additional questions, comments? Any additional questions or comments from the board? No. Okay, so what we have in front of us is the consideration of a plan. The next thing that we would need to make a determination of is if we want to move this forward, which would be the next step in the process, to the planning commission. This would then be presented to our planning commission at a public meeting to review and make a recommendation back to the board. And it could take more than 1 meeting, but that would start the next planning commission meeting, which is Wednesday, April 15th at 7 p.m. And then after they got through the planning commission process, planning commission would make a recommendation. It would come back to the board of supervisors. And then we would have a public meeting or a public hearing, and that public hearing would be advertised. We would need to send out legal notice and a whole host of promotions through the township's website, e-news, and social media to make sure that everybody was aware. So that's generally what the next steps would or could be. The next thing that we would consider, is there any concerns with moving forward and sending this to the planning commission? We don't technically have to vote. But are there any concerns? I'm just curious from the board.
I have a question. If we okay this going to the planning commission, it just starts the process. It can still be revised, like comments about density, comments about traffic improvements, open space, the community open space, that can all be more specifically addressed.
Yes.
At the planning commission level. This is not an approval of this plan.
1000%. This coming to us and having this meeting is a special step that's usually not taken, but I knew that there's a lot of interest. The application came through. I wanted to give the public the opportunity to see it and be able to digest it before the planning commission is considering it. So the next normal step is that they're going to go to the planning commission. They submitted the application. They also submitted a conditional use application. So those two things are going to happen on the 15th,
Okay, well then,
unless we make any kind of explicit request not to have that transpire.
okay.
Okay. All right. Thanks. So next up is consideration for us as a board to grant authorization for the advertisement of a legal notice for the public hearing that would be held following the planning commission. So understanding the planning commission and their natural course of action, they're going to review it and they're going to take their time to review it. And once they come to a review it and make a recommendation, we would then need to have authorization we would actually have to have the public hearing. And so we need to be able to grant our staff the authority to advertise that public hearing when it's going to come up. So it doesn't mean that we're good with the ordinance, the conditional use application and the ordinance amendment. Doesn't mean that we're good with the language now. Doesn't mean we're good with anything now. What it means is that once we know that it's getting ready to come back to us, they have the authority to make that legal advertisement. So first, and do we need to do them separately? You want us to do them separately or do them together? Mr. Solicitor?
You can do them separately.
Okay. So what we would have before us is I would like to make a motion to authorize the advertisement of a legal notice for a public hearing to be followed by the planning commission review to consider a text ordinance amendment for the Springhouse Corporate Center. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. Next up would be then the authorization to advertise a legal notice for a public hearing to be held following the planning commission review to consider a conditional use application for the Springhouse Corporate Center. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. I thank you for coming and participating in our presentation to the board. And thank you all, public, for coming and participating and commenting and sharing your feedback. You don't have to stay if you don't want to. You're more than welcome to. We only have 2 or 3 things to go. But again, we thank you. And please, please go to the township's e-news website and sign up so that you can get reminders.
Yeah, so you can get reminders and alerts about the upcoming.
It's on the agenda.
hearings.
It's on the agenda. Just sign up. Okay, I'll give them a minute.
Feels nice without you here. Now.
Listen, I get it.
It's quieter without you, Mike.
Yeah, I agree.
See you guys.
Listen, it took all I could not to say anything.
You could.
Could we trademark Slower Gwynedd for a speed campaign with the chief?
I don't know, Chief.
Did you hear that?
We have somebody online making a recommendation.
Ms.
Yeah,
Pagano?
I would.
She would like to
love-
trademark lower
Listen,
Gwynedd
I
as
cannot
control.
I can't take credit for that. It was actually one of the officers that I was speaking with. That he actually said that, I think it's
you.
Upper Gwynedd or another neighboring township, makes fun of Lower Gwynedd and calls it Slower Gwynedd.
Wait,
So-
that's funny because they call Delaware lower, slower Delaware.
Well, there you go. So I cannot
lower,
take credit
slower
for it.
Gwynedd.
I would like
I
to
think-
trademark it, make it on t-shirts, make it on signs.
Yeah,
Slower
do it.
Gwynedd.
Let's do it.
I'm ready.
Maybe
All
we
right,
make our
I'm sorry.
money
We're
that
going to
way.
have to get back to the meeting. Thank you
Please.
guys for your comments. We have before us our general business. Next up is the invoice report for April 7th of 2026. Has everyone had a chance to review the invoice report?
Yes.
Any questions or concerns related to the invoice report? I would like to make a motion to approve the invoice report for April 7th, 2026. Is there a specific check that you need us to authorize, ma'am? And with the authorization of that one check included, I'd like to make a motion for approval. Is there a second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. Next up is the minutes from our board meeting, March 24th, 2026. Has everyone had a chance to review? Any questions, comments, or concerns? Seeing none, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes for the meeting of March 24th, 2026. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? Motion carries. I do want to make an announcement that the Board of Supervisors did meet in executive session prior to tonight's meeting and to discuss matters of personnel decision, potential litigation related to emergency services, and supervisor training. Our supervisor liaison reports are included in our board packet. Staff updates? We have no staff updates. Supervisor comments? Ms. Brockway? Janine?
No.
Janine? Jimmy,
Have a good night.
Tversky. Thank you guys all. I'd like to make a motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Meeting is adjourned.
You guys did a great job.